Part 51. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 512. The enemy appeared in the sight of the helicopter. The truck used by the Pannenstein rebels to transport missiles was also modified, with steel plates welded all over the body, giving it a wild beauty. In addition to the truck, there were two modified pickup trucks on the left and right. These pickup trucks were equipped with heavy machine guns on the back. They had already discovered the helicopter and fired, trying to prevent the helicopter from approaching. The helicopter pilot immediately raised the altitude upon seeing this. Jason held up an assault rifle, sat at the side door of the helicopter, and aimed for a long time without firing. The enemy was a steel behemoth, and 5.56 mm bullets could not knock open the enemy's tortoise shell. Fortunately, the Black Hawk helicopter they were riding was MH-60K, with 12.7 mm heavy machine guns installed on both sides, and the S short wings were also equipped with Stinger air-to-air missiles and Hellfire anti-tank missiles. So he pulled out the heavy machine gun that was tucked away on the side and said to the helicopter pilot, "Fly around." The helicopter pilot replied calmly, "No hurry, wait until I kill those two mosquitoes first." Although the 12.7 mm bullets fired by the enemy's heavy machine guns were just tickling the armor of the key defense parts of the Black Hawk helicopter, the open side doors and other weak positions still posed a certain threat. The helicopter pilot did not want to take such a risk, and was more worried that the other party would suddenly take out a single soldier anti-aircraft missile, so he had to eliminate the threatening target first. Leon and Jason had no bulletproof glass protection in front of them, so they naturally agreed with the other party's approach. Two whooshes sounded, and two air-to-ground missiles were launched. The two heavy machine gunners who shot at the helicopter immediately shouted loudly, asking the driver to maneuver and try to shake off the missiles. They obviously thought too much. One pickup truck was directly blown into a fireball, and the other was also blown over and lost its combat capability. When the helicopter approached, Jason also fired a burst of bullets at the overturned pickup truck to ensure that the enemy was eliminated. The truck ran all the way, but how could it outrun the helicopter? The Black Hawk helicopter flew directly to the right front of the truck, and Jason shot directly with a heavy machine gun without hesitation, instantly beating the driver and the people next door into pieces. The truck finally overturned on the road. Seeing this, Jason immediately issued a new order: "We land, you cover at high altitude, I don't want to be caught off guard by the enemy's support." Leon had no objection to this, but the helicopter pilot said, "I can cover you, but only for an hour and a half, then I will go back to refuel." "Got it?" The helicopter began to land, and after Leon and Jason got off the ground and moved away from the helicopter took off again. The two checked the cab first. While Leon was concentrating on searching the enemy who was broken into pieces, Jason took out a piece of paper from his pocket and shook it with the enemy's broken hand. These were all done in the blind spot of the other party's vision. As for himself, he was wearing gloves, so naturally there would be no fingerprints left. Leon suddenly shouted, "I found the biochemical virus that the enemy traded from the Greyhound organization." Fortunately, it was not damaged. At first, they thought that this kind of thing would be stored in the cargo box. "I seem to have found the enemy's plan here." Jason opened the folded paper under Leon's gaze. How could a normal person carry a complete plan with him? Leon came to Jason's side and looked over. The content on the paper was very simple, just asking the driver to deliver the missile and the biochemical virus to the factory together, which looked more like a notice. "What is this factory?" Leon muttered to himself, not thinking that Jason would know the answer. Jason naturally knew the answer, but he couldn't say it directly. To be honest, he was not good at these, so he recited directly according to Major General Wilson's words: "The industry of Pannenstein is very poor, and there are not many factories. We can search along this road and check one by one." Wilson's prepared manuscript did not mention the enemy's modification of missiles. He believed that a quick-thinking guy like Leon could figure this out. As expected, Leon thought for a while and said, "So the enemy wants to send the missiles and biochemical viruses to the factory for modification." Jason immediately agreed, "I think so too. But we have successfully solved the enemy's plan." Leon nodded. Since the other party needs to exchange biochemical viruses from the Greyhound organization, it means that the Pannenstein resistance itself does not have biochemical viruses. Even if they did not find missiles in the carriage, the effectiveness of the enemy's conspiracy would be greatly reduced. He relaxed a little and said, "If we didn't fall into the enemy's plan to escape, the missile should also be on the car, and I will be able to go back soon." Jason nodded, but still reminded, "Don't relax until the last moment." It was rare for him to say something good, because he was reminded by Leon's words, and suddenly remembered one thing, that is, the truck was not intercepted near the factory. In other words, the enemy's operation of damaging the fuel tank allowed him to successfully intercept the truck in advance. Although he still laid down the clues according to Wilson's arrangement, Leon's words just now clearly indicated that he didn't intend to continue to care about the next thing. Without Leon's third-party proof, Wilson's plan to become the Minister of Defense should be slightly prevented. Leon didn't feel strange that Jason's tone suddenly became better. This mission required them to run around, and now they finally got something, and normal people would feel happy. But he had seen a lot of boats capsizing in the gutter, so he replied in agreement, "I know." After checking the cab, Leon and the other two prepared to check the cargo box to confirm the situation of the missile. "Be careful, the enemy may still be alive." In order to avoid damaging the missile, Jason did not attack the cargo box and reminded him. Leon naturally knew this. The impact caused by the rollover might not knock out the enemy hiding in the car. The door lock was directly broken, and the left door opened directly due to inertia and fell to the ground. The two did not rush in anxiously, but cooperated to open the door on the other side first. Leon turned on the chest-mounted flashlight, and then moved the cargo box under Jason's cover. In order to transport missiles, the Pannenstein rebels carried real cargo. "See the missiles, and there are two enemies whose life and death are unknown," Jason said, holding a gun and walking in with Leon on the cargo. "Go to hell," one of the rebels pretending to be unconscious suddenly stood up, and Jason was quick to deal with the enemy. Another enemy who was preparing to attack from the east and west by taking advantage of his teammate's sacrifice was shot in the arm holding the gun by Leon. Leon wanted to capture the other party and then ask the enemy's purpose, so he shouted, "Put down your weapons and surrender." Jason followed Wilson's request and naturally did not allow the other party to live, and raised his gun to shoot the enemy. Leon did not stop him. He thought Jason was just on guard, because he did not put down his pistol either, but approached with his gun raised. However, before Jason could shoot, the enemy held a dagger in his other hand and stabbed him directly in the heart. The man's eyes were wide open, staring at the two people, and finally died without a sound. Leon had only experienced anti-biological warfare, and he was shocked to see the enemy so determined to kill himself. Although Jason was relieved, he also respected the enemy. He saluted to express his respect for the enemy. After confirming that there were no living enemies in the carriage, Leon and Jason began to count the number of missiles they found. After counting, Leon said, "The number of missiles is correct. But how do we transport these missiles back? The Harpoon anti-ship missile is 4.63 meters long and weighs 1,110 kilograms. They can't move it with just the two of them." Jason said, "Let the helicopter help transport it back first. I will go to command. You report the situation to Major General Wilson first." "I see." Leon didn't know how the other party would use a helicopter to transport the missiles out of the cargo box, so he had no objection to this arrangement. Although Wilson was the commander of this mission, he still reported the matter to the president first. President Seymour, all the missiles have been found. Very good, you have done a good job in this incident, and you can come back next. Seymour was satisfied with Leon's behavior of reporting to him first. Leon received the order and said, I see. I'll check the situation with Major General Wilson first. Well, the other party is the commander of this mission, so it's only right to tell him. After Leon hung up the phone, he called Major General Wilson and told him the story again. When Major General Wilson heard that the other party wanted to go back, he didn't try to stop him. He just said, I see. You and Jason will transport the missile back to the garrison base, and then I'll arrange a plane to take you to Turkey. Leon agreed with the other party's suggestion and hung up the phone. Although the other party didn't send him back to the lighthouse country directly, he was secretly surprised. This means that as long as there is no sudden incident, he can take advantage of this time to rest well and return home slowly. He can even call to ask where Ada is now, and the two of them can meet and relax. After confirming the plan, Leon turned his head with satisfaction to look at the situation on Jason's side. Jason's method is very simple. Let the helicopter land, then tie the box containing the missile with the cable above, and then the helicopter will fly directly at low altitude to pull it out. They didn't find welding guns or electric saws, otherwise it wouldn't be so troublesome to cut a hole in the cargo box directly. The missile box had been dragged out by the helicopter at this time. Jason was busy reinforcing the box. He was going to let the helicopter send the missile back directly. Leon went to help and told him what the president and Wilson said. Jason's eyes flickered. He didn't think Wilson would be so kind as to let Leon, a chess piece, leave the chessboard that had been arranged long ago at the last moment. But with his intelligence, he couldn't figure out Wilson's next plan. The other party only told him what he should know, and he didn't know anything else, such as the tasks of other members of the Mad Dog team. Jason clenched his fists, and finally relaxed. The way back was smooth, and someone signed for the missiles and took them away soon. Major General Wilson also came to greet the two great heroes in person, and made a declaration, brushing a wave of presents among the soldiers. Then he took Leon to visit the garrison base, showing him the prowess of the lighthouse soldiers under his management, and also whispering evil in his ears. Wilson was not a war advocate. He wanted to continue the war in Palestine to serve the arms dealers behind him in exchange for support, and to accumulate military merits to transform into political resources. Therefore, as long as it is profitable, he will start a war without any psychological barriers. President Seymour is a conservative and dove, and he is more focused on solving domestic economic problems, so he became a dark horse and ascended to the throne of the president. There is actually no real opposition between the two sides. With this in mind, Wilson's words to Leon mainly focused on the corruption of the military, and he also told him the follow-up to the military's buying and selling of missiles. Although Leon has also worked in the Z government department for many years, he is still new to an old man like Wilson, and he will be filled with anger after being spoken to by him every few times. I didn't expect such corruption in the military. If it is a heartless and selfish person, he may not be angry when he hears these words. After all, this matter has nothing to do with him at all. But Leon was not this kind of person, so he immediately became dejected. Because this was nothing he could change, it gave him a deep sense of powerlessness. Wilson patted the other party's shoulder and said, "Leon, just watch. I will definitely change this trend in the future." Jason, who was accompanying him, didn't interrupt from beginning to end, but his eyelids jumped when he saw the other party patting Leon on the shoulder. Before he became the so-called hero of Palestine, he had been patted on the shoulder by the other party. As a result, in order to survive, he could only become a puppet played by the other party at will. So far, he has endured the humiliation and endured the heavy burden, in order to one day get the advantage of the other party. The three of them circled around and arrived at the airport. At this time, Wilson pointed to the cargo plane that was refueling and said, "Leon, you can get on this plane directly later. They will go to Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey. Over there you should be able to return home by yourself, right?" He laughed, looking like a kind elder. Leon nodded and said, "I will contact the people over there to help." Wilson added, "Okay, you must be tired too, why not eat something now?" Before he finished speaking, a soldier hurried over and saluted directly to the Major General. Wilson frowned and asked, "What happened?" "These two agents are our own." The soldier said, "A biohazard incident has occurred." "What?" Upon hearing this, Leon immediately asked, "Where is it?" The soldier glanced at Leon, then turned to Wilson. After seeing his superior nodding, he said, "Over there in Kunar province." Leon frowned and immediately said to Wilson, "Are there any professional antibiochemical talents in the garrison? If not, do you need my help?" As soon as Jack heard this, he understood that Wilson wanted to use this to bring Leon back to the chessboard. But he was standing next to Wilson and didn't dare to speak rashly. After Wilson thought for a while, he said, "Then I will borrow you from President Summer for a few days until the BSAA people come over." He added, "I will help you contact President Samur. You and Jason will lead the team out now to investigate this incident and save civilians." Leon and Jason said in unison, "Roger." Wilson nodded, turned around and went back to take charge of the overall situation. Before leaving, he patted Jason on the shoulder and said meaningfully, "I'll leave this matter to you." Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 513. Leon and Jason, along with the rest of the Mad Dog team, headed to their destination. The city of Asadabad, where the destination is located, is now in chaos, and all the Lighthouse State troops that originally occupied the city have withdrawn. Leon also reported the biological crisis to the Far East branch of BSAA before receiving the official order from President Samur. Wilson's preparatory plan will not only bring Leon back to the chessboard, but also bring BSAA into trouble. As for Tarisef, who came with BSAA, this unofficial organization was not part of his plan and was dispensable. Although Tarisef is only an unofficial organization, it has a great influence among the people. Rejecting or hindering this organization will only affect your own reputation, which is not worth the gain. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Of course, Major General Wilson does not have this power. Jason first introduced Leon to his teammates along the way, saying, "This is the President's Special Commissioner. He is here to supervise and assist us in carrying out our mission. Hello, I have heard of your name. You have made great achievements in Pannenstein." Leon was not a compliment. The Mad Dog team completed the mission with a 100% survival rate, and the mission success rate was also 100%. No matter how difficult it is, they can complete the task unswervingly. Leon feels this is a great achievement. However, the Mad Dog team who heard this said nothing and looked at Leon expressionlessly, and the atmosphere became a little awkward. Finally one of them broke the silence and said in a heavy tone, "There is a price in this." Their entire Mad Dog team was caught by Wilson, and now they must rely on Wilson to survive. Yes, although they are all hailed as Pannenstein's heroes, in their view, they are now just tools to survive in the world. Leon thought of Jason's resentment towards his superiors and felt that there might be other stories in it. Naturally, he would not take the initiative to ask. Instead, he pretended to misunderstand what the other party meant and said, "So that's it? To be able to achieve such an achievement, there must have been a lot of hard work behind it." "Haha, you can think so." The man shut up after saying that, and the cabin fell into silence again. Jason calmed down, clapped his hands, and said, "Okay, I'll explain the mission again." They held a simple combat meeting when they set out to sort out their equipment, and now they just reconfirmed that everyone knew the mission content. After Jason confirmed that everyone except the transport helicopter pilot was paying attention to him, he began to repeat the mission content. This time our target location is the outskirts of Asadabad in Kunar province. There is an oil refinery there, and it is said that the biohazard virus was sent into the city from there. According to the intelligence collected and provided by Wilson, this was a good thing done by the Pannenstein rebels. In fact, it was the members of the Mad Dog team except Jason who spread the biochemical virus in Asadabad. No one interrupted, they were all listening carefully. Jason continued, "Our goal is to eliminate the enemy there, while also investigating the situation to see if we can collect evidence." He turned to look at the people next to him and said, "Deputy team, when the time comes, you will lead one team, and I will lead another team, and the troops will be divided into two groups to search the refinery. Leon, you are experienced, so go to the deputy team to help." "I understand, I'm in charge of the left area." The vice captain of the Mad Dog team nodded. His task was to put on a show in front of Leon, lead him in circles, and buy some time for Jason to discuss things. In fact, he had memorized the maps of the refinery and the hidden research institute. There is only one person on Lion's side, and he is the same as any other team, so there is no objection. Jason finally asked everyone to check the time on their watches and gave the order to check the equipment. After everything was done, they sat quietly and rested in place. They were riding a CH-47 transport helicopter. The pilot first confirmed the situation and then started to land. Everyone in Lyon left the transport helicopter through the rear door, and then immediately dispersed into a circular formation, alerting them to the surrounding situation. The door is closed and there is no guard in sight. Leon raised his gun and aimed it, opened his eyes, and did not lose too much vision. He could directly see the situation of the refinery gate and the guard room. "Detach your team and get ready to go in." Jason made a gesture and whispered an order through the communication channel. With an order, the circular formation turned into two columns, one on the left and one on the right heading towards the gate. They did not land directly inside the refinery, so they had to walk forward 200 meters before reaching the gate. Because of the noise of the helicopter, zombies gathered towards the gate. "Zombie," Leon walked in the middle of the second team and was well protected. Previously, the helicopter pilot said he saw a human figure, so he retreated a few hundred meters to land. Unexpectedly, zombies also appeared in the refinery. He couldn't help but suspect that the enemy was harming others and himself, and there was a biochemical leak in the territory. "First team shoots, second team is on standby." Jason gave the order and directly asked his men to shoot. It is not necessary for everyone to shoot at the gathered zombies at the same time, as that will only waste ammunition. He and his men raised their guns and used burst shooting to eliminate the zombies behind the iron gate one by one. After cleaning up, the two teams began to enter and immediately separated. Jason waited until the second team walked away before he led his men to the other side. After clearing a safe place, they did not move forward. Before Jason spoke, one of the team members began to tell the other party what they had done in the refinery and the Internal Research Institute before. After listening to this, Jason did not express his opinion, but just nodded and hinted, "What about the arrangements above?" It sounds like a hint about Wilson's things, but in fact it is just a cover, asking about their plans. These members of the Mad Dog squad dare not bet whether there are Wilson's monitoring equipment around them. Although they are not moving now, even if they are seen, they can use the excuse of exchanging mission intelligence and discussing plans. Major General Wilson is not a person who knows nothing about military affairs, so he will not doubt that there is something wrong with this approach. After all, in order to prevent Jason from having too much contact with the Mad Dog squad, he took the opportunity to transfer Jason, the captain, to be an agent after obtaining the title of Pannenstein Hero. So now Jason is the only one who doesn't know the situation of the refinery, and it is reasonable for his teammates to tell him this information. As for why this information was not told during the meeting, it was naturally because Leon could not know. The member of the Mad Dog team who was pushed out as a representative to explain the situation said, "Of course, be prepared. But can that agent really help?" He was in a state of confusion. Jason sighed and said, "In the end, it depends on the one at the top." He did not expect Leon to solve the problem, but only hoped that President Seymour behind Leon could help defeat Major General Wilson. Then he said, "Okay, that's it, let's continue." On the other side, Leon came to the cargo yard and saw an open container. "There's something strange there," he pointed to the container over there. The deputy captain looked over there, and a strange look appeared on his face. Although refineries generally use tank trucks for transportation, it seems to be an option to directly load oil barrels and use containers for transportation. Therefore, it is not strange to have containers in the cargo yard. So the deputy captain of the Mad Dog squad asked, "What's strange?" He felt strange because he remembered that there were no containers here when he left. Leon replied, "This container should not be thrown on the ground casually, and there is no special container loading equipment or forklift around. The container is hollow, but it is not easy to install it on a large truck by manpower or forklift alone. Wouldn't it be more convenient to put it on the truck directly with oil drums?" The deputy captain looked around and ordered, "Let's go and have a look." Everyone approached cautiously, and Leon shot down the zombies he encountered along the way with a pistol. This is a frugal habit he developed during previous missions. Pistol bullets are used to shoot small zombies, and assault rifle bullets are kept for those big guys. As for the problem of gunfire, the first shot was fired at the gate. This factory is not like a city, and the number of zombies is limited, so Leon didn't say much about this. "Expert, did you see anything?" The deputy captain did not look down on Leon because of his age, and directly called his name. An anti-biochemical authority recognized by the president, it is not too much for him to call him an expert. "Just call me Leon." Leon felt that the other party was now a comrade in arms, and it would be too distant to call him an expert. He turned off the flashlight and replied, "This container was used to hold zombies, which means that the biochemical crisis in the refinery may have been deliberately caused by someone. Is it possible that the people in the refinery put the zombies into the container and shipped them out in order to create a biochemical crisis?" The deputy captain will take Wilson's task seriously based on the internal consultation of the team. As Jason said before, they don't have much hope for the current plan, so naturally they won't put all the chips on Leon. Leon thought of the virus sample he found from the driver of the resistance army. He still has this sample with him and has not given it to Wilson. Originally, he was going to send it to BSAA to confirm whether it is the same biochemical virus used in SIDA. Now that Paniston has also experienced a biochemical crisis, he can also use this virus to confirm whether it is consistent with the biochemical virus here. Through this kind of detection and comparison, a lot of useful information can actually be obtained. After all, the enemy generally won't go to the trouble of dropping two different biochemical viruses in the same area. On the other hand, Wilson naturally knew that Leon didn't hand over the virus, but he didn't care. Because there has never been evidence that the Paniston resistance did not conduct research and development of biochemical viruses. They exchanged for new biochemical viruses this time, perhaps to improve the biochemical viruses on hand? Or is there another conspiracy? The resistance is not stupid, otherwise how could they fight against the Lighthouse Army for so many years? And he has prepared for the response and rhetoric in advance, so it is not a big problem for Wilson not to hand over the virus. He used airdrops to send the zombies in the container here, and the purpose was to prove that the refinery belonged to the Paniston resistance. Therefore, these zombies are the Paniston resistance and those workers hired specifically to deceive the United Nations investigation team. Back to the refinery. Leon thought about it and had a few untenable guesses in his mind, so he didn't say it out. Judging from the situation at the scene, it was obvious that his previous guess that the Pannenstein resistance did not have a biochemical virus was wrong, but why did the other party trade viruses with the Greyhound organization? He felt that this question might require the help of those researchers to get the answer. Leon said to the deputy captain of the Mad Dog Squad, "Let's record this matter first, and we will continue searching." The deputy captain nodded, and then took Leon to run around, perfectly avoiding the entrance of the institute. Jason calculated the time, came to the hidden entrance, and opened the door. "Is this here?" he confirmed with his teammates behind him worriedly. After getting a positive answer, he contacted Leon. The secret entrance was used, so Leon had no doubts. There were no surprises in the battle in the secret institute. Everything was in Wilson's plan. Leon found a lot of evidence and intelligence in this institute, including that this was once the Institute of Sanley and Company. According to the intelligence collected, after the collapse of the Tri-Union Company due to the company's chaos, the people in this institute knew that they could not clear their names. They did not dare to surrender to the Lighthouse Army because they were being called out by everyone, so they directly reached a cooperation agreement with the Pannenstein Resistance Army to provide them with biological viruses and biological weapons. The Pannenstein Resistance Army could only provide limited funds and materials, which caused the Institute's research on large-scale infection viruses to stagnate, so there was a trade of biological viruses with the Greyhound organization. This is the rhetoric that Wilson prepared for Leon and President Seymour. All the previous research data on enhanced drugs have been transferred to his own institute, except for the forged data related to large-scale infection viruses. Under this statement, those researchers who knew what they had done naturally could not stay. However, Wilson obviously underestimated the narrow-mindedness of those researchers. These researchers are not nerds, nor are they the kind of people who only know how to do research. They were closely monitored by Wilson and naturally could not escape the other party's palm, but they could still make trouble, such as a handwritten diary, which happened to record their transaction with Wilson. Leon had good luck and found this hidden diary. Others were collecting other documents and deliberately ignored Leon's actions. After taking a look, Leon immediately hid it and did not tell the Mad Dog team members related to Wilson. BSAA and Terra Sephir arrived at Pannenstein at almost the same time and quickly took action to put out the biochemical crisis. Claire, a member of Terra Sephir, also came here and began to appease the refugees. At this time, Leon had already left Pannenstein and was in a hurry to go back to find President Seymour. Wilson, who thought he was doing things perfectly, did not embarrass Leon. The other party was in a hurry to go back and report the situation, which was exactly what he wanted, and naturally there would be no assassination or other plots. Because this matter was more urgent and he was carrying important evidence with him, Leon gave up his previous plan to travel at public expense and went directly back to the lighthouse through the CIA channel. Without even putting down his luggage, he took his things directly to the White House and found President Seymour, who was working. Meow, thanks for your subscription and votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 514. President Seymour looked at the two items placed on the table and asked, "What is this?" Although Leon returned to the lighthouse country through official channels, he never mentioned the diary, so President Seymour still doesn't know what happened. He called the president in front of Major General Wilson and reported the discovery of a biochemical and virological research institute in Panston. But 5 minutes before the phone call, he sent a text message to Hannigan, asking her to contact the president and tell the other party that what he would say on the phone later had not yet been finalized, and asked the president not to rush to make a statement. Hannigan was the person sent by President Seymour to him, and she worked hard and would definitely not miss the text message, so he chose to send a text message to her instead of sending it to the president, who was busy with everything. President Samur now fully trusts Leon, so he agreed to accompany him to perform the scene for Wilson. Leon replied, "Your Excellency, what is in this box is the biochemical virus traded by the Greyhound organization to the Pannenstein resistance." President Samur frowned. If he didn't trust him, he would have called the bodyguards in and asked 10 big men to take down Leon. Since the last time the White House was attacked by zombies and lickers, the security level of the White House has been raised by 1 level, with the number of bodyguards doubled. His own life was the most important thing, so Lyon's so-called urgent matter had to be postponed for now. He decided to deal with the virus sample first and asked, "What do you mean? You brought such a dangerous thing in." Leon quickly apologized to the other party, and then said, "Time is tight, I don't have time to deal with this virus. I will contact the people at BSAA later and ask them to take the virus away for testing, and the recent biochemical crises in Ceuta and Gibraltar. Viruses for comparison." He was so anxious to report back to the lighthouse country that he forgot to give the virus sample to BSAA first. President Samur also heard that the other party made mistakes because of anxiety, which proved that Leon still needs to practice. But it was a coincidence. With this biochemical virus, their lighthouse country seemed to be able to intervene in the biochemical crisis in Spain and the United Kingdom. This is the responsibility of the world police. So he said, "This virus sample does not need to be handed over to BSAA or FBC, it will be kept and analyzed by your DSO, and then you will communicate with the 2 anti-biochemical organizations." It just so happens that he can take this opportunity to exercise Lyon's political ability. Leon was stunned and said, "Your Excellency, our DSO does not have a research department. They are just an agent organization targeting biohazards." President Samur said, "Don't worry, it will be available soon. I am planning to transfer the previous Anti-Umbrella Research Institute to your DSO. It has mature equipment and personnel and can be used directly. This is a strategy formulated by Organization X to monitor the new organization DSO. Anyway, there are too many research institutes related to the organization to count." Leon was a little secretly happy, but also had some doubts. He took the initiative to ask, "Why don't you give the virus to those 2 organizations, but then you have to contact them?" President Samur replied, "Think about it yourself first." Leon did not disappoint him. He quickly thought of something and said, "Biochemical crises have occurred in both Gibraltar and Ceuta, but they are handled by 2 different anti-biochemical organizations, so whichever side I give will offend the other." President Samur smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, and we can also take this opportunity to join in and obtain more information about these 2 biological crises." Intelligence is the most important in Leon's impression. Luo Guang seemed to have said similar words. Samur nodded in agreement. Although it may not be useful now, no one knows what will happen in the future. He made up his mind, "You will be responsible for this matter. Now let's talk about the urgent matter." Leon looked at the diary on the table and said, "I found this in the Secret Research Institute of the Pannenstein Resistance Army. The contents inside seem to prove that recent events may have something to do with Major General Wilson. There were only 2 of them in the office, so he directly named Wilson without hiding it." President Samur was relatively calm and did not answer Leon immediately. He just picked up the diary and looked at it carefully. Who in their right mind would write such a diary full of secrets? President Samur saw the answer to this question from the first page. The person who wrote this diary deliberately wrote all this in because he did not trust Wilson, who was more of a politician than a soldier. The further he looked down, the more serious the expression on his face became, and he asked, "Have you read everything in it?" "I just saw it, so I rushed back overnight to let you, the president, check it out." If it were Leon at the beginning, he might have directly confronted Wilson, and then been attacked by the Pannenstein Resistance Army and died heroically. President Samur said with great satisfaction, "You have done a good job. This kind of thing should not be done lightly." This diary details Wilson's cooperation with Sanley and Company to develop biochemical soldiers. As for Wilson's cooperation with the resistance, it is not mentioned. Because of this diary, Leon also knew that he was deceived by the other party's performance and almost became the other party's accomplice. If I really confirmed the Pannenstein Resistance Army's development of biochemical viruses and told the president, and asked the lighthouse country to announce this matter to the world, it would be irreversible. What the lighthouse country said was correct, and he would not admit his mistakes, but it would be troublesome if anyone else found out the truth about this incident. It is only a blow to the reputation of the lighthouse country, but it is a fatal blow to President Samur. But in this situation, the president is in a situation where he can advance, attack, retreat or defend, and he can deal with it more calmly. Leon said without confirmation, "Your Excellency, on the way back, I reviewed the whole thing and I have some doubts." Once the seeds of doubt are planted, many things that happened before become intriguing and worth thinking about. As soon as President Samur heard this, he said, "Just treat us as chatting and discuss it." Leon nodded and said, "Would anyone really do such a thing as buying and selling missiles? And I heard that the quartermaster responsible for missile maintenance committed suicide out of fear of crime." Wilson told him this. President Samur was paying attention to this matter, so naturally he knew the situation immediately and said, "Yes, that person did commit suicide out of fear of crime, so if there is anyone else above." He paused for a moment before reacting and said, "Do you suspect that the person above the quartermaster is Wilson?" Leon nodded and said, "It's understandable to buy and sell some individual weapons, but missiles are difficult to transport. Do the rebels need to go all the way to buy them from the lighthouse country and then send them back home? The resistance has better purchasing channels, such as the Furry Bear Nation." President Samur somewhat understood the other party's thinking and said, "It is better to use the missile directly in our country. Even if there is no biochemical virus in it, as long as it explodes in the mainland, it will be of great significance." The great significance here does not refer to how many lighthouse people were eliminated, but the great political significance. Leon thought so too, and continued, "From this point of view, there is actually not much difference whether or not the biochemical virus is used. On the contrary, the use of biochemical viruses will only make Pannenstein's international environment worse. There are still many countries that sympathize with Pannenstein and provide assistance to the refugees there. But in this regard, Leon is overthinking. There are not many talented people in the Pannenstein resistance who have read books and seen the world, and many of them died in the resistance in the early years. The current leader is just a hot-blooded middle-aged man who just wants to drive the invaders out of his homeland. With this idea, he would naturally do anything and would not think about the impact that using biochemical viruses would have on his country. That's why he was bewitched by Wilson's disguised behind-the-scenes sponsor, and finally chose to cooperate with the Greyhound organization in exchange for biochemical viruses and implement the plan to attack the factory. The conclusion previously reported by Leon now has to be questioned, but President Samur still recalled that conclusion and said, "But there is a high probability that cooperation with the Greyhound organization in exchange for missiles is true." He continued, "Perhaps the rebels changed their approach and chose to use biochemical viruses. This is also possible," so Leon did not refute and put forward a guess, "It is possible. According to other evidence I found from that research institute, it was mentioned that the virus from the Greyhound organization of the resistance was used to improve the virus in his hands." He recounted what the institute's clear clues and evidence pointed to, and continued, "The resistance may have no biochemical virus in hand, so they exchanged it with the Greyhound organization. And Wilson knew the other party's plan. In order to bury the evidence of his and Sanlian's crimes, he deliberately misled me into thinking that the research institute belonged to the rebels. For this reason, he even did not hesitate to betray the national interests. He used his position in the military to sell missiles to Pannenstein and take charge of the entire incident. President Samur said what Leon wanted to say first. Leon nodded and said that this was indeed what he wanted to say, and it was also in line with the conclusion he said at the beginning. President Summer thought thoughtfully. Wilson's recent political activities have indeed been frequent, and there have also been negative news against the current Secretary of Defense and positive news about Major General Wilson in public opinion. He had previously suspected that Wilson wanted to abandon the military and enter politics and become the Secretary of Defense. Combined with what Leon mentioned, this is obviously clearing up the dark history and paving the way for his rise to power. Leon looked at the president, who was tapping the table lightly, and asked carefully, "Your Excellency, what should we do next?" President Samur stopped his fingers, looked at Leon, and said, "You are tired all the way back. Go back and have a rest first." "I'll think about it." "Yes," Leon answered quickly, but the worried look in his eyes was seen by the president. What worries him is naturally the president's decision to cover up the truth after considering all aspects. After Leon left, President Samur thought about it for a while, and finally made a decision and called Wilson. After listening to what the president said, Wilson was also full of surprise and panic. Compared with the facts, what the other party speculated was 80% correct. If this matter is exposed, let alone whether he can be the Minister of Defense, it will be considered hallelujah if he is not sent to prison. He forced himself to calm down. Since the president called him instead of directly sending someone to arrest him, it proved that there was still room for maneuver. At this time, he must not deny the bad things he has done, because from the president's words, he heard that the other party had confirmed that he had done it. After listening to the other party's explanation, President Samur sighed in his heart. Leon was right. Everything the other party did was for the position of Minister of Defense. The quartermaster who sold the missiles was from a big arms dealer. He wanted to cooperate with Wilson for the biochemical soldier strengthening medicine in his hand. This medicine can increase the combat effectiveness of soldiers by more than 50% and ignore some minor injuries. With the emergence of the new market of biochemical weapons, those arms dealers all hope to get a share, but they suffer from the lack of technical support. But these arms dealers have the most important funds for biochemical weapons research, so they naturally hit it off with Wilson. In Wilson's plan, as long as he becomes the Minister of Defense, the next step is to cooperate with arms dealers to do this business of biochemical soldiers and make a fortune together. He wants to be the Minister of Defense not to realize any political ambitions, but to take all the power, money, and beauty into his arms and finally reach the top of the presidency. Of course, the presidency is still a bit far away for Wilson now, so it will not threaten Samur's current position. After listening to Wilson's explanation, President Samur was weighing various interests in his mind. The reason why he chose to confront Wilson was for the interests of himself and the country. As for which side is more important, Samur thinks both sides are important. The national side has been mentioned before, basically it is about international image and other aspects. President Samur does not have his own personal power in the military, which makes his policy of focusing on internal economic development always blocked by the military faction of congressmen. Don't talk about the separation of military and politics, the military doesn't care about these. In fact, they and arms dealers secretly sponsor a lot of congressmen and state legislators. Don't forget that these economic policies that promote people's livelihood will also affect the cake of the rich, and the congressmen they sponsor will also block the promulgation and implementation of policies. The president of the lighthouse state has considerable power, but important economic policies often need to be passed by Congress before they can be officially promulgated. Even if he uses an executive order to bypass Congress, Congress can apply for invalidation through the Supreme Court. So far, he has successfully promulgated many economic policies, but the state governments have been under the control of capital and have not implemented them seriously, resulting in little improvement in the economy. If he cannot fulfill his promises before taking office, his support will naturally decline, even if he has a good record in fighting biochemical crises. Perhaps some people will say that since domestic demand cannot be stimulated, why not use war to divert people's attention and promote the economy? This approach also violates his campaign promises and is unpopular. More importantly, only fighting a security war with Pananistan cannot really promote the economy. Under the current international environment and the development of weapons and equipment, the battles between major countries will definitely spread to the homeland of the lighthouse. It is impossible to sit back and relax in the rear like in World War I and World War II, and then produce and sell various products to make money to promote economic development. Therefore, President Seymour needs to obtain the support of the military to fight against the congressmen controlled by capitalists. Of course, he also understands that Wilson's ambition will definitely not stop at the Minister of Defense, but with the recording of this call and the diary, he has a handle to control the other party. Actually, I forgot meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 515. Working day after day, time unknowingly came to December. After several clones working together, Luo Guang accumulated several times the fatigue, and finally finished all the work before the new year. Next, he planned to play for half a month, and then go back to Lighthouse Country to meet up with Leon and others. He stretched and opened the news briefing that the Red Emperor sent every day. Will the country of Pananistan study biological weapons? Luo Guang clicked on the detailed page and saw the statement issued by Lighthouse Country. In the following related news, there was also news about Wilson becoming the Minister of Defense of Lighthouse Country and the ambushed and sacrifice of Panastan's heroic Mad Dog Squad. The reason for the resignation of the former Minister of Defense was naturally corruption and incompetence. He was investigated for the missile trading incident, and finally resigned to settle the matter. The reason for Wilson's promotion was naturally that he performed very well in Pananistan Country and recovered the missiles that were sold, and coupled with the proper operation of his personality, he was recommended by President Seymour to serve as the Minister of Defense. Luo Guang remembered the story of Wilson and the Mad Dog Squad quite clearly, but the reason why he remembered it so clearly was that the plot of the web drama was so bad that it made a deep impression on people. However, judging from the information he had collected so far, the current situation was completely different from the content of the web drama. Thinking of this, he asked Hong Huang to continue collecting information and asked her to sort out the content related to this person from the database of Sanli and Company. At the same time, he sent a text message to Leon's private mobile phone. Unexpectedly, the other party's reply came quickly. Leon had just arrived in the city where their headquarters was located and asked him to go out for a drink. Luo Guang took his belongings and walked out of the office to find Ashley, saying, "I'll go out for a while." Although he had Ashley's help, he still remembered the work tasks himself and did not bother the other party to remind him what to do every day, so he could confirm that the next schedule was free. Ashley looked at the other party and blinked her beautiful eyes and asked, "What are you going to do?" Her boyfriend is now hailed as a hero who saved the world, which naturally attracted the attention of many women, so she had to keep a close eye on him. Luo Guang answered honestly, "Leon is here, he asked me to go drink." Ashley asked again, "Want to have dinner together tonight?" "I'll ask him then, you finish the work at hand first, otherwise I'll leave you behind when I go traveling." Luo Guang's words actually meant that he didn't have to come with him later. Ashley smiled and said, "You can't bear to leave." "Okay, I don't want to go out drinking with two grown men. Also, alcohol is not good for the body, don't drink too much." Luo Guang said, "Then I'm leaving. If you have dinner with Leon tonight, I'll call you." Usually, Luo Guang buys groceries and cooks. Ashley also started to cook after hearing the phrase "grab a man's stomach." But Ashley obviously doesn't cook much, so the cooking skills of the two are very different. She now feels that her stomach is tightly grasped by the other party. Luo Guang drove to a bar a few kilometers away and found Leon at a glance. Normal adults have to work during the day, so they don't have time to drink, so Leon is the only one in the whole bar. The boss was wiping the table. When he saw a customer coming in, he said, "Welcome, what would you like to drink?" "Just the same as my friend Luo Guang is now immune to alcohol, and he prefers coffee or tea to alcohol, so it doesn't matter what kind of alcohol he drinks." He pulled out the chair next to Leon, sat on it, and asked, "You can find alcohol for you in broad daylight. If you want to drink, you can find alcohol naturally." Leon had already drunk a glass while waiting for Luo Guang. After the boss brought Luo Guang's wine, he raised the wine glass in his hand. After the two clinked glasses, they drank it all in one gulp. Luo Guang asked the boss to prepare some snacks, and then said to Leon, "Tell me, what happened?" As the president's exclusive agent, Leon had not been the leader of the DSO for long. It was a bit strange for him to suddenly go on vacation. In addition, the other party started drinking in broad daylight, which must be a problem. "Alas, I'm on vacation." Leon immediately applied for vacation after dealing with the aftermath of the missile incident, and President Seymour agreed very readily. The other party also knew that Leon actually disagreed with his decision to cover up the facts, but President Seymour did not remove Leon's position or put him in a nominal position. Luo Guang asked, "Why? Now is the time for you to show your strength. Is the DSO organization so idle?" Leon shook his head and said, "It's not idle, but there is nothing special. I just need to deal with some daily affairs on time." Luo Guang drank the wine as if it were water, and stopped the other party from drinking. "Eat something before drinking." Leon sighed deeply, told the truth about the missile incident, and then told Claire about looking for him. After the biochemical crisis in Palestine, Claire immediately organized the Terra Sever rescue team and set off with the United Nations humanitarian team to Asadabad city to carry out rescue. She heard a lot of unconfirmed rumors there, such as the factory was not owned by the rebels, or the people who put the virus in the city were not Palestine people, but lighthouse people pretending to be people, and so on. If it were just that, Claire would not believe it easily. After all, the two countries are at war now, and it is normal for them to smear each other. Not long after, her team accidentally rescued a dying man who was burnt all over. This person was Tristan Jason, who was already on the death list. After Wilson confirmed that he had become the Minister of Defense, he set out to eliminate Jason and his team, who knew his details and were disobedient. The people of the Mad Dog Squad were injected with enhancement drugs, but the stability of this enhancement drug was very poor. They needed to inject inhibitors regularly, otherwise they would mutate into zombies. Therefore, Jason and others were coerced by Wilson to do all kinds of dirty work. The people of the Mad Dog Squad were serious and careful in their work. They were responsible for cleaning up the research institute of the refinery. How could they let go of the diary that Leon found? When they were scattered to collect evidence, the Mad Dog Squad and others in the same team deliberately gave that place to Leon to search for evidence clues. Jason and others just prayed that President Seymour would stop and discover the bad things Wilson did after knowing this, so as to save them from hell. The result naturally disappointed those who shed blood for the country abroad. The Mad Dog Squad decided to overthrow Wilson by themselves. While he was busy taking office, they collected evidence of his corruption through various means. However, Wilson was one step faster. After sending the Mad Dog Squad out to perform the mission, he also arranged for mercenaries to ambush the team. These enhanced soldiers were equipped with a chip to monitor and collect body data, but Wilson did not explain this. Instead, he asked the mercenaries to destroy the bodies with a bucket of oil and a cigarette, and destroy the chips in their bodies with high temperature. As a result, Jason came back from the flames of hell. After he dealt with the frightened mercenaries, he fled all the way, and finally couldn't hold on and fell to the ground and was rescued by Claire and others. Wilson naturally received the news of the mission failure, but the people sent out could no longer find Jason. I don't know if Jason has a higher adaptability to the enhanced drugs in his body. His ability to resist and recover is higher than that of other team members, so under the careful care of Claire and others, he successfully survived. Hearing this, Luo Guang asked, "Did Wilson attack Claire's camp?" He had checked the background of the bar and the owner. They were clean and not the base of the X organization. Leon finished the rest of the wine in the glass, and Luo Guang refilled it for him. No, after Jason told Claire about the incident, Claire contacted the BSAA and secretly transferred the people there. Neither she nor I know where they went afterwards. Luo Guang asked again, "But only witnesses can't threaten Wilson, right?" He also knew a few people from the Far East branch, and he didn't know if he could get some information from them. Leon smiled bitterly and said, "There is physical evidence, but I submitted it to the president of the lighthouse country." He also communicated a lot with Claire, who had returned to China. Claire knew that he went to the institute to search for evidence, so she asked him if the official side had obtained any evidence. Luo Guang looked at the bitter expression on the other person's face and said, "Is Claire angry?" Leon nodded and told the conversation. Claire was different from him. She didn't believe that the lighthouse country's government would handle the matter truthfully. She went to Leon because she believed that Leon would not go along with them. She didn't expect that Leon actually handed such important evidence directly to the president without leaving any other evidence. This was not what made her angry. What really made Claire angry was that Leon knew the truth of the matter, but was indifferent to it and chose to compromise, and even asked her to stop investigating the matter. Leon knew that he was in the wrong, so he had to remain silent, and the two finally parted unhappily. After hearing this, Luo Guang thought for a while before asking, "Have you ever thought of other ways?" Leon held the wine glass with both hands, but did not pick it up to drink, and said, "I have no way." Luo Guang used his clone to confirm the relevant evidence extracted by Hong Huang from the Sanlian Company database. There were indeed audio and video recordings of the company's transactions with Wilson, but these things obviously could not be used as valid evidence. He was the only one who had the information. If he took it out rashly, it would be easy for people to know that he had secretly hidden the information of Sanlian Company, so he did not say it, but asked instead, "Is the physical evidence still there?" Leon replied, "It should be in the hands of the president." Since the physical evidence was not destroyed, Luo Guang said directly, "Let Ada steal it." Huh, Leon was stunned when he heard this. Luo Guang said, "You have her phone number, right? Anyway, it is not easy for you to do it, so let her do it. Anyway, there is no need for such a pot." Leon waved his hand and said, "This is too dangerous, and stealing is not a good thing. Ada also wants to turn over a new leaf now. Isn't this doing a good deed? Have you heard the story of robbing the rich to help the poor?" Luo Guang felt that there was no need to talk about the code of conduct when dealing with a demon like Wilson. He continued, "Now President Seymour is in the same boat with Wilson, and your power comes from the president, so there is naturally no way, so this time you can only rely on outsiders to solve it." Leon covered his head and fell into entanglement. Luo Guang drank some wine and ate some peanuts, and reminded her, "Ada is a strong woman with strong opinions. Why not ask her for her opinions and ideas first?" Leon was stunned and said, "Yes, I am struggling now, but it will be useless if she doesn't agree in the end." He turned around and said, "But I don't want her to continue making mistakes. It's not easy to steal things from the White House, not to mention that the security of the White House has been strengthened a lot." Luo Guang nodded and said, "Okay, don't bother your future wife. Leave it to me." He thought about it and felt that it didn't seem necessary to go to the trouble of finding any evidence. He also felt annoyed by the nonsense in court later. So the simplest and most effective way for him was to let Wilson surrender himself. Of course, the other party would definitely not do this, so Luo Guang had to let the other party have a conscience. As long as he could find a way to control Wilson with the Shinra virus, he could naturally let the other party surrender himself with evidence. Without waiting for Leon to answer, Luo Guang added, "This matter will take some time to prepare. Leave it to me, and you just need to do what you should do." Leon was very curious and asked, "What are you going to do?" "Keep it secret, you will know later." Luo Guang thought of one thing and said, "But this matter is also related to Seymour, and he may be implicated at that time." Leon thought about it, but did not ask, just said, "I know." He was very grateful for the opportunity given to him by President Seymour, but he also mentioned this risk when talking to the president. President Seymour felt that he had prepared for the cut in advance and nothing would happen. The two drank another glass, and the matter was discussed. Luo Guang took the initiative to say, "Ashley is working in the African branch now, let's have dinner together tonight." Leon shook his head. He took a vacation just to relax, and he could only talk to Luo Guang about many things, so he came here specially. Since Luo Guang said that this matter was handed over to him, he believed that the other party would not let him down. In addition, Leon didn't know that Ashley had successfully taken down Luo Guang. He just didn't want to be a light bulb and hinder Ashley's plan. He also smiled and said his reason, "You told me to focus on my own things, so I'd better go back to work." Although Wilson has not been brought to justice, he felt much better after he vented his inner depression to Luo Guang. Luo Guang nodded, and didn't persuade him much, just said, "Remember to coax Claire when you go back. Just say that you will leave this matter to me, don't let her do anything stupid." Leon understood what Luo Guang meant, otherwise he would not have asked Claire not to investigate this matter at that time. But Claire misunderstood him, thinking that he wanted to conceal the truth and condone evil like him. Of course, Claire was not wrong to think so, but Leon said this more out of consideration for Claire's safety, not anything else. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 516. Luo Guang returned to the Lighthouse country after playing with Ashley and Jill for more than half a month. Unlike before, Jack and Carlos did not come with Luo Guang to attend the party this year. They stayed at the GIMZ South Africa base with Katie to celebrate the new year. Wu Song's clone was there, so Luo Guang could also attend his own army's New Year party this time. Not only the GIMZ army, he also arranged clones in the Caucasus base to celebrate the New Year with Hong Huang and his men, and to comfort his employees. Hong Huang knew about the existence of Luo Guang's clone. Luo Guang let Hong Huang know about this after he restricted the underlying code. In addition, Barton did not attend either, as he had to spend his birthday with his wife and children this year. Although Shirley had been kidnapped before, she successfully got a vacation this time, and Kara allowed her to come out for the holiday. Naturally, Roman and other agents who were responsible for protecting her were also squatting outside Chris's house at this time. It was a bit cold tonight, so Luo Guang was very considerate and sent them some hot food and hot cocoa, and by the way confirmed that the other party did not use some long-distance eavesdropping equipment. Roman and others knew that Luo Guang was a member of their own organization, but he did not eat the food and drinks sent directly, but began to enjoy them after checking safety. There is another very important thing about Shirley. She is now a beautiful girl with a graceful figure, without the childish feeling before. In addition to the spiritual growth after the kidnapping, her body has grown rapidly again. As the saying goes, girls change a lot when they grow up. Shirley is close to 18 years old. As she grows taller, she naturally loses her childishness. By the way, Kara's research has made great progress again. Now she just needs to collect more experimental data and human trials. At the same time, she is using the Plaka parasite to build a private armed force for herself that Simmons doesn't know about. Leon and Claire walked in with a large bag of things in their left and right hands. These are all beers to drink tonight. After the two made things clear, the misunderstanding was resolved and they reconciled. After the unpleasant parting, Claire went back to calm down, and rethought the previous conversation and Leon's expression at that time, and soon realized that the other party had his own difficulties. People in the rivers and lakes, they can't help themselves. Leon is in the government, and it is not wise to let him rebel against his superiors, but it will make Leon lose his job. The other party is the only one among them who works in the government and is one of the important sources of intelligence. When clearing up the misunderstanding later, Claire also knew that Leon went to Luo Guang for help directly, which showed that the other party was not indifferent to this matter, but she misunderstood the other party. But a month has passed, and Claire has not seen any movement from Luo Guang, so she plans to ask Luo Guang about the progress later. Now that Shirley is here, it is most important to have a happy party first. Luo Guang also brought the last dish to the guest seat, wiped his hands and went to the table. He raised the glass filled with red wine, and everyone else raised their glasses with a smile. Happy New Year! After a good meal and a good drink, Luo Guang lost himself in the delicious words and laughed. As a temporary chef, what he likes most is to hear the compliments of the diners and see the smiles on their faces. There is no distinction between men and women. Except for Luo Guang, who is responsible for cooking, the others cleaned up the rice bowls together, wiped the table, and then put beer and snacks on it again. Without Jack, Shirley had no one to play with her. However, Shirley is almost an adult, and Claire thinks that there are some things that Shirley should know, so she did not accompany Shirley to watch TV or play games, but pulled her to the table to chat. After each party, they would discuss what happened this year. The topic was not limited to the biochemical crisis, but everything would be discussed. For example, Leon looked at Jill on the left and Ashley on the right. He finally had time to ask the chef, who had been busy all day, the questions he had been holding back today. Luo Guang, I have a question I have wanted to ask you for a long time. As soon as Leon said this, the others looked at Luo Guang at the same time. Ashley and Jill each took a juicy strawberry and took turns feeding it to the boyfriend sitting in the middle. Luo Guang ate 2 strawberries and asked with puffed cheeks, "What's the problem?" Although he asked this, he roughly guessed the other party's question. As expected, Leon asked, "What is the situation of you three now?" Luo Guang ate the strawberries, with a smug look on his face and a sound of asking for a beating from his mouth. He. He spread his arms, hugged the 2 beauties on the left and right, and said, "The situation now is just as you see, hugging on the left and right, flying together every day." The tone of the last sentence was a bit vulgar, so Jill couldn't help but punch him in the chest, while Ashley was a little shy and buried her face in her chest. Chris said to Leon, "He looks so worthy of a beating, how about we go together?" He was obsessed with muscles and reached the 5th stage of biochemistry. He couldn't stand Luo Guang's mean look. Without waiting for Leon to reply, Luo Guang smiled and asked, "Chris, can you punch through the concrete wall now?" In the past, he performed breaking the concrete wall in front of Chris and Steve, but now he changed the wording to punching through the concrete wall. Chris obviously noticed the difference, laughed, and said, "I'm almost there, at most I can break the concrete wall." Of course, the breaking here refers to the surface of the concrete, not the whole wall. Claire took the opportunity to say, "Brother, Luo Guang has 2 future wives, why are you still single?" Like last year, she asked the same question again. This year, Leon was more calm than last year. After drinking a sip of beer to moisten his throat, he said, "Yes, now we only need you and Steve." As soon as Chris opened his mouth, Claire shouted in surprise, "What? Leon, you actually have a girlfriend?" Jill didn't have much contact with Leon, and asked, "Leon is a handsome guy anyway, is it strange to have a girlfriend?" Very strange, Leon's words were ignored by Claire, and she explained, "Because I remember that he failed to pick up girls several times. He once told me that he was rejected as soon as he opened his mouth." Luo Guang laughed immediately, haha, it seems that this handsome face doesn't work. Leon really couldn't refute this, but still said, huh. No matter what you say, I also have a girlfriend now, just faster than Chris and Steve. Jill wanted to spread the war, and said, Leon, you didn't say Claire has a boyfriend, is your girlfriend? Steve, who was drowsy after being drunk for several bottles of wine, was shocked and woke up. He looked at Leon with a very surprised expression on his face. Obviously he didn't realize that Jill was just joking. Chris was concerned and confused, and misunderstood for a moment, but he quickly reacted. If the two really had that intention, they wouldn't have to wait so many years, and Claire wouldn't have been surprised just now. Shirley blinked her bright eyes and didn't interrupt like a good baby. She and Claire have known each other for a long time, and she also knew that they were just friends and had never crossed this line. Finally, it was the straightforward Claire who took the initiative to deny it. We are not in that kind of relationship. Steve was relieved to hear this, but soon he lay down on the table with a decadent look and sighed deeply. He and Claire actually knew each other not much later than Leon. If we count the time they have known each other, he has known each other for a lot longer than Leon. But until now, their relationship has not developed further, which makes him feel tired. Claire also saw Steve's look and still felt a little sorry. She also drank, and she suddenly thought that maybe she could give it a try. Before the Raccoon City incident, Claire also had some yearning for love like ordinary girls of the same age, but in the face of the cruel reality, she only thought about how to help the victims of the biochemical crisis and ignored her own affairs. Under the catalysis of alcohol, a part of her heart softened, but soon she shook her head again. She didn't want to agree to Steve because of the softness of her heart under the influence of alcohol. Ashley interrupted, "Is Leon's girlfriend the woman in red?" She recalled the incident of the Church of Light. Although this kidnapping case brought her a terrifying experience, it also brought her a beloved person. This incident is a common memory between her and Luo Guang, so there will be no shadow. Luo Guang took the lead and said, "Yes, it's her." Leon, who has experienced all kinds of storms, also nodded shyly. Claire smiled and asked, In this case, why doesn't she come to the party together? Is she shy?" Leon looked at Luo Guang, as if asking for his opinion. Luo Guang did not avoid his gaze, but just said, "This matter can only be decided by you, Leon." He felt that Ada's matter would have to be said sooner or later, and it would have to be faced sooner or later, but he could not make this decision for Leon and Ada. Everyone was silent for a while. Leon finished the wine in the glass, and then said, "I will introduce you to you when I have the chance in the future." It is not easy for him and Ada to officially start this relationship, instead of being lingering like in the game. Ada, this charming little cat, is very sensitive. He is worried that he will annoy Ada if he tells her things without her permission. Although the other party is not here and cannot know what he said here, Leon chose to respect her. After everyone's jokes, Chris finally escaped Claire's mother-like nagging. After laughing, Claire planned to talk about some serious matters. "Luo Guang, what's the situation of the thing that Leon asked you to do now?" It is said that there is a kind of remote eavesdropping device now, so she dare not explain the situation directly. Ashley was surprised and said, "So Leon asked you for something that day? I thought you really went to drink." Leon was also stunned when he heard this, and said, "We went to drink. Didn't you smell the smell of alcohol on him?" He didn't think Luo Guang would let his girlfriend live alone. "No," Ashley said, "I didn't find him taking a shower or spraying perfume." Luo Guang looked up at the ceiling at this time, as if thinking, but actually confirming the situation of the clone. Hearing Ashley's words, he lowered his head and said, "Ashley, we didn't drink much at that time. I can drink a lot, and the alcohol will go away after a walk." Not only can he drink a lot, but Ashley can drink many times more. She drank with everyone tonight, but she didn't drink less. She didn't get drunk until now. Luo Guang then answered Claire's question, the people I sent are still approaching the other party. This matter is not so easy to solve. Approaching the other party, Claire understood the other party's general plan when she heard this. The same is true for Leon, but he has a question, who are you approaching? The one with a lower status. The person Luo Guang sent out is from the Donald family, rich and well-connected. It happened that Wilson was promoted to Minister of Defense, and it was the time to recruit troops, so the undercover agent successfully got a position. This person's purpose is not to steal any information, but to find a way to infect Wilson with the Shinra virus, so he just needs to wait for him to meet the other party face to face. The specific operation is very simple, but Wilson is also busy now, and because one of the Mad Dog team survived, Wilson is still in a period of vigilance, and there are always a lot of bodyguards around him. Therefore, the undercover agent dare not approach the other party rashly for the time being. Luo Guang briefly explained that Wilson was still on alert, so Leon and Claire had no more questions. Although the others didn't know what they were talking about, they didn't interrupt them. And since Luo Guang and the others were talking in riddles, it proved that this matter needed to be kept secret, so they didn't ask any questions. Luo Guang changed the subject and asked, by the way, Jill, you said you found a successor before. How is it going now? This refers to Parker's succession. Successor, Shirley asked curiously, Sister Jill, are you going to resign from BSAA at such a young age? Jill smiled slightly and replied, it's not a resignation, but I'm no longer the director of the European branch. Luo Guang continued, saying, after all, we are a couple, and it's not okay to have a long-distance relationship every day, so I asked her to come to the African branch to help me. Shirley was very smart and smiled, are you going to get married next? Ashley also liked Shirley, this cute child, and said, yes, we are going to register for marriage in South Africa. Luo Guang nodded. However, he planned to postpone the plan of having children, at least until he solved the Apocalypse Organization. The Apocalypse Organization likes to kidnap people with strong adaptability, and his child's adaptability will definitely attract the favor of the Apocalypse Organization. He didn't want to do any drama of looking for a child thousands of miles away. After answering Shirley's questions, Jill talked about Parker's basic situation. Then she continued, he performed well in the stolen submarine incident and the subsequent mission. But Parker jumped from FBC after all, so I plan to observe him for a while. Luo Guang nodded and said, we understand. We will wait for you. After all, the current European branch is also your hard work. Ashley nodded. The foreshadowing is almost done, and the plot of Revelation 1 will begin next. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 517. After celebrating the New Year with Leon and others, Luo Guang took Ashley and Jill to the mysterious country to continue their vacation. After traveling around the Earth, the few people did not separate and went to Terra Grigia together in February. This sea city built with the latest technology has been mentioned before. The most eye-catching thing is the city's solar array and a series of the latest green environmental protection technologies, which allow the city to meet the daily electricity needs of the entire city with solar power generation alone. Of course, the electricity here is only for living and office use, because there are no factories built in the entire city. Otherwise, solar energy alone cannot supply the bottomless industrial electricity. As early as a year ago, the city opened applications for occupancy and office buildings for rent, and Luo Guang also bought a duplex apartment here for vacation. He knew that in the game of Resident Evil Revelation, the city would be destroyed by the solar array satellite named Sun Palace. But the Greyhound organization in this world is no longer a weak biochemical terrorist organization that needs funding from the FBC. Moreover, the current situation of FBC is also very different from that in the game. The outstanding BSAA organization has given countries more options and autonomy in dealing with biochemical crises, so Morgan will not insist on destroying the entire city with satellites. As long as the city is not destroyed or sunk, the property rights of this apartment will not be lost. Luo Guang really has more money than he can spend now. He is usually a practical person, so he will not buy any luxury brands, but buying a house is another matter. In the end, he also bought an expensive insurance for the house. After 11 years, this sea city was finally fully opened, so Luo Guang and his friends came to see the new house and attend the city unveiling ceremony a week later. Luo Guang was invited in the name of the head of the African branch of BSAA, and he could bring an assistant with him. The entire process was paid for by the Z government of Tarragrigia City. So Ashley participated as an assistant, and Jill participated as the head of the European branch of BSAA. That's right, not only Luo Guang, but also the heads of other branches brought people to participate. So Chris from the North American branch came with Steve. Most of the BSAA senior executives, including O'Brien, came to the unveiling ceremony. Because in addition to the official opening of the city, the BSAA headquarters will also be moved here. The FBC organization still follows the lead of the Lighthouse country, so the headquarters did not move here, and only moved its NATO branch into Tarragrigia City. Another famous anti-biochemical organization, Terra Sephir, also moved its headquarters here, and they want to continue to maintain close cooperation and contact with BSAA. That's right, Claire, an important member of Terra Sephir, also came on the same flight as Chris. But the two belong to different organizations, so they did not stay in the same hotel. Although the FBC did not move its headquarters here, Morgan was still invited to attend the unveiling ceremony. After visiting the apartment, Luo Guang, Jill, and Ashley returned to the hotel to tidy up their appearance and prepare for the next event. Tonight, BSAA will hold an annual meeting in the conference room of the hotel. Everyone took their seats. Because of her position, Ashley could only sit in the assistant seat in the back row this time. Luo Guang, Jill, and Chris sat together to reminisce about the past. Although it was reminiscing about the past, they had just gathered together before, so they were just chatting about nothing. The meeting started soon, and O'Brien took the stage to summarize the development of BSAA over the years. After several years of exploration, our organization has become more and more mature. So far, BSAA has become an international organization with 100,000 people. 100,000 people seems a lot, but it is very few when scattered around the world. These people include a large number of logistics staff, who are divided into different teams responsible for technical, medical, physical, and spiritual support. The rest are combat personnel, divided into regular combat troops and deployment teams. Regular combat troops are divided into professional soldiers and part-time registered soldiers. Part-time registered soldiers refer to part-time soldiers who have other regular occupations but can respond to the call-up when a biochemical crisis occurs. The deployment team is divided into Special Operation Units, SU, and Special Operation Agents, SOA. The reason for this distinction is that there are so many countries in the world, and not every country agrees that the BSAA troops can perform tasks in their territory. When regular combat troops and action teams cannot enter to perform tasks, a small number of elite agents are needed to complete the task. Take Luo Guang's African branch as an example. It has 8,000 professional regular troops and 3 special operation teams of 12 people, but no special operation agents. If there is a task that requires agents, he will often lead the team himself, the clone, and draw personnel from the special operation team to cooperate with him. Although agents also have the function of being the eyes and ears of the branch, For Luo Guang, the intelligence network he has is already strong enough, and it is already a dimensionality reduction strike on the matching area of the African continent. In addition, the number of combat personnel is not fixed. Because of the powerful NATO countries, the branches of Chris and Jill have only 2,000 to 3,000 regular combat troops, and most of them are part-time. But they have more than 6 action teams, and there are also a large number of agents scattered around. O'Brien is still explaining the recent developments, saying, so far, more than 80% of countries are willing to accept our military operations on their territory. This is also very important. The anti-biochemical achievements of BaseDonaMovie have opened the door to some NATO member countries, making the competition pressure of the FBC organization even greater. At the same time, our finances have also developed very well, and this year we have finally achieved a balance between income and expenditure. The BasedonaMovie organization initially relied on sponsorship from various countries and private donations to obtain operational funds. But Luo Guang once told him about this sponsorship problem, so O'Brien also developed many side jobs related to anti-biochemical, such as training and publicity speeches. He also sent someone to write an illustrated book about biochemical monsters, which sold as a popular science illustrated book at the time. Therefore, the BasedonaMovie in this world is different from the one in the game. It has not received funding from the Global Pharmaceutical Federation, and is developing in a positive direction overall. As O'Brien talked about the recent development of the organization, the next thing was for the heads of each branch to speak. Chris just said a few simple words and ended. He didn't even prepare a speech, and the assistant Steve he brought was obviously not good at this. Jill took the speech written by Luo Guang and said a lot of things. After all, the European branch is an extremely important branch. In the past, this branch was basically an extension of the headquarters, but now that the headquarters has moved, the European branch has been restored to an equal position with other branches. This is done to show that the BasedonaMovie is international and does not favor any continent. As for the finale, Luo Guang, who came on stage last, said, "The commander and the heads of various departments have said so much before, and they have said everything they should say, so I won't say too much nonsense." Except for the 3 of them, people from other branches said a lot of meaningless words. He continued, "Food is the most important thing for people, let's eat quickly." Yes, a buffet dinner was prepared for this meeting, which was held in the next door meeting room. Indeed, many people were hungry, and they couldn't help cheering and applauding. But when they saw O'Brien come on stage, they seemed to have pressed the mute button, and the cheering stopped instantly. O'Brien did not spoil the fun, he directly announced that the dinner could start. Under the guidance of the waiter, the group came to the restaurant next door. O'Brien took the initiative to find Luo Guang and went to a place with fewer people. Others were also very observant and did not come over to eavesdrop. Although O'Brien had said before that he wanted the other party to take over, they had no face-to-face communication since then. Luo Guang, long time no see. Yeah. It feels like it hasn't been long since I first met you. At first, he didn't feel it, but when he thought about it, Luo Guang felt that time had passed quickly. Thank you so much for the company's chaos. O'Brien thanked him in person, and then continued, are you used to the African branch? Not bad, I also promoted the European branch's system to Africa. O'Brien laughed, he knew that Luo Guang had seduced the director of the European branch, and had been on vacation for more than 2 months, leaving the affairs of the branch to the deputy director Magwan. Luo Guang said, the outbreak time of the biochemical crisis is too unstable, so I have to take time to rest. BasedonaMovie or other anti-biochemical organizations or departments basically only attack after the biochemical crisis occurs, and rarely take the initiative to thwart the conspiracy. There is no way, the enemy is in the dark and we are in the light. Unless a biochemical crisis occurs, BasedonaMovie does not have the power to enforce the law under normal circumstances, and can only cooperate with local law enforcement departments. O'Brien nodded and said, "Yes. I have an idea recently, that is, we cooperate with intelligence organizations of various countries to generally." He recently heard that the FBC is going to start a new cooperation with the intelligence department of the lighthouse country, the purpose of which is to monitor the telephones, mobile phones, emails, etc. of ordinary people at home and abroad, so as to prevent the emergence of biochemical crises in advance. Luo Guang received the news from the FBC through the channel of the X organization, and this is true. He interrupted and said, "It's better not to do this. This kind of unpopular thing, the BSAA organization is not suitable to participate in it." He gave his own explanation and said, "I said before that you are too radical and will do anything for justice. And you won't see that the FBC wants to do this, so you have this idea, right?" He did not infect the other party with the Shinra virus, so this question was just his guess. O'Brien smiled bitterly when Luo Guang said what he thought, and the other party saw his inner self from the first meeting. He replied, "Yes, it is because the FBC did this that I had this idea." Luo Guang said, "You are infringing on the rights of ordinary people by doing this." O'Brien replied, "I know, but this is also to protect more people. Every time you see the civilian casualties after the biochemical crisis, don't you have any idea of saving them?" Luo Guang felt that the other party was malicious from the world and wanted to force him to turn to the direction of revelation. He said, "O'Brien, saving everyone is God's job, not our mortals. The FBC is backed by the lighthouse country, they only need to consider this. But our BSAA is an organization under the United Nations. Do you think all countries will agree with you? As long as one country does not cooperate, the whole plan will be scrapped. The nature of the two organizations is different, so they cannot be generalized." Before O'Brien refuted, Luo Guang said, "The United Nations is also useful because of the face given by various countries. Its power comes from each participating country. Do you think the intelligence organizations of various countries will agree to hand over this intelligence to our organization for monitoring the whole world? And from a technical point of view, this is also difficult to implement." O'Brien sighed. He was just unwilling for a while, so he was stuck in a dead end. After being enlightened, he also knew that this matter only looked good, but the benefits and risks were completely disproportionate. This also made him more convinced that Luo Guang was his best successor. Being in a high position, he was sometimes too subjective, and even used all means for the justice he believed in. Luo Guang looked at the other party and said, "What we BSAA should do is to improve the early warning mechanism and enhance the deployment capability, so that our people can arrive at the scene as soon as possible to carry out cleanup and rescue operations. In fact, the lighthouse country is already doing this kind of monitoring of civilians, but judging from the results, it has little effect, so there is no need for BSAA to get involved." O'Brien thought for a while, nodded and agreed to Luo Guang's suggestion, and discussed the relevant content together. A week later, the unveiling ceremony of Terra Grigia City officially began. The whole city was immersed in a sea of joy. There were colorful balloons, giant banners, and various decorations everywhere. The stores that were open for trial operation before and officially open today have started discount activities, hoping to make a fortune in this carnival. This carnival is not only attended by locals who have bought houses here, but also by a large number of tourists who have come to this high-tech and environmentally friendly city by plane and passenger ship. Luo Guang and his group have been tired of playing in the past week, and there is also an opening ceremony to attend today, so after getting up, they took a solar bus directly to the Terra Grigia City Hall. However, this week, Luo Guang did not forget to do business in addition to playing. His clone is still active, confirming that there is no ominous ship Queen Dido among the cruise ships that came to Terra Grigia this week. Its sister ship also did not approach the waters around Terra Grigia. Of course, now that the world line has changed, the Greyhound organization has also robbed a combat submarine. But it is not just him. Various countries including Italy predict that the Greyhound organization will take this opportunity to make trouble and launch a biochemical crisis, so they have sent the Navy here in advance. The Greyhound organization is indeed an environmental protection organization, but they are too extreme and think that humans should return to the days of slash and burn farming and completely abandon the convenience of technology. Therefore, in their eyes, Terra Grigia is not an environmental benchmark, but a thorn in their eyes with heinous crimes. But that was in the past. The main purpose of the Greyhound organization now is to avenge the victims of the biochemical crisis. It's just that the revenge target of those victims is not the dead Wesker, but the anti-biochemical organizations in various places that failed to rescue their families in time. So the top leaders of the various anti-biochemical organizations gathered in Terra Grigia are now their best targets for anger. They naturally understand that their submarines have become the focus of attention. Therefore, the day before the opening ceremony, the Greyhound organization planned a biochemical crisis with submarines on the coast of England, attracting the attention of other countries. And in Terra Grigia, they have already prepared other means. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 518. The Greyhound organization's strategy of making a feint to the east and attacking in the west, coupled with the preparations over the past few days, ultimately prevented the security forces of Terra Grigia from discovering and preventing them from launching a biochemical crisis in time. The methods used by these bad guys are not complicated. They completely disassemble a bomb into various small parts, or directly purchase replacement parts in local shops. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Originally, the most troublesome thing was how to transport the biochemical virus and biochemical monsters into Terra Grigia, but they did it on the day they stole the submarine. That's right, the reason they stole the submarine was to instigate this biochemical crisis against Terra Grigia. When the mayor of Terra Grigia was giving a loud speech in the square in front of the government building, they had already planned the attack and started, as if to slap him in the face. Huge explosions sounded from all over the city, and the surrounding security personnel immediately pulled out their pistols. The mayor also ran to the Z government building under the cover of his bodyguards, leaving the guests behind. Luo Guang was shocked to see this situation. He didn't expect the mayor to escape so decisively without caring about the people below. Even shouting with a microphone is better than doing nothing. Jill immediately went to find Ashley at the moment of the explosion, and Chris also ran to Terra Sephir. As for Steve, Chris felt that the other party would definitely go to Claire first, not his immediate boss. Luo Guang immediately found O'Brien and said, "Do we have guns in the arsenal of our headquarters?" Because Terra Grigia is an international and diversified city, it is prohibited to carry guns except for special permits. Although Luo Guang and his BSAA have special permits, there are also special conditions, that is, they can only be held in the event of a biochemical crisis, so they are not carrying weapons now. O'Brien was shouting for everyone to calm down and asked them to find the security here to cover them into the government building. He heard Luo Guang's words and replied, "Yes. But they are just some basic weapons. The strongest weapon is only a 5.66 mm caliber assault rifle." Luo Guang replied, "That's enough." As soon as he finished speaking, his phone rang. His clone quickly went to the explosion site and quickly confirmed the situation. Although the main body could know the situation directly, in order to avoid being discovered, he still asked the clone to call him. Luo Guang quickly hung up the phone and said to O'Brien, who was waiting for him, "My informant confirmed that a biochemical crisis occurred at the explosion site." A thick fog with viruses appeared at the explosion site, and everyone who inhaled it turned into a zombie. He glanced and saw Jill coming back with Ashley, and also saw Morgan entering the city government building under the cover of his men. Luo Guang continued, "From the mutation speed, the zombies in this incident are the same species as the zombies in Suda. The clone was also able to quickly confirm that a biochemical crisis had occurred here because of the enemy's mutation speed. "Then what should we do?" asked the director of the South American branch. Luo Guang turned his head and answered directly, "The plan remains unchanged, let's go back to the headquarters. Jill, you contact the troops of the European branch to come for support immediately." Jill nodded and immediately took out the phone. "I know." O'Brien also said, "I will report this to the United Nations immediately. There are a large number of reporters filming in Terra Grigia City. The outbreak of the biochemical crisis here will soon spread to the world." After the two finished the call, Chris also came back with Claire and Steve. In addition to the two, there were many people from Terra Sever following behind. "The team is longer." Luo Guang pulled out the invisible straight knife behind him. "He hasn't used this weapon for a while. He didn't bring his R-9 pistol, but this knife that can cut iron like mud is enough." When everyone saw Luo Guang pulling out his weapon, they were a little surprised. They had passed the security check to attend the unveiling ceremony. However, no matter how many questions there were, no one would ask them at an inappropriate time now. Although there were many people attending the opening ceremony, the city of Terra Grigia did not skimp on the money. Instead of using plastic stools, they used iron folding stools with backrests. So Luo Guang did not rush to leave, but used a knife to chop off the legs of the folding chairs diagonally. These were made of iron, and the inclined side could barely be used to kill zombies. But the quality of this thing was not very good, so he chopped off more than a dozen folding stools in one breath and distributed these makeshift weapons to everyone. Then he pulled out two short sticks with pointed heads made from hardened armor from his back and handed them to Jill and Chris. They were strong enough to blow their heads off with one blow, so this weapon was also a good choice. After everyone took up their weapons, Luo Guang began to lead the team. The group had no objections, so he naturally became the leader. The zombies mutated too quickly, and the flow of people was dense. A large number of zombies quickly spread out, and Luo Guang could not lead people to completely bypass them, so he could only bypass the hardest hit area at the center of the explosion. The zombies blocked him again, and Luo Guang rushed up directly and solved the enemy with a single sweep of his knife. The people following behind him held the chair legs tightly in their hands until they were numb. At first, they were surprised at Luo Guang's fighting skills, thinking that he was worthy of being a hero who defeated the big devil, but they became numb after watching too much, and they didn't scream like before. The team had a large number of people, so naturally the formation was stretched out, so no one dared to stop along the way. In order to cover everyone, Jill and Chris ran on both sides of the team to help, while Claire and Steve were responsible for the rear. Jill's battle looked thrilling. She took advantage of the zombies' brainless setting and made the zombies block each other's attack angles through positioning, so that she could face more zombies calmly and turn one-to-many into one-to-one. In order to cover the team, she even took the initiative to attack forward, entered the encirclement of many zombies, and then easily retreated without a drop of blood on her body. Those branch directors sitting in the office and the Terra Sefer members who had no combat experience at all suspected that Jill's combat power was actually better than Luo Guang. Chris on the other side, with his moves open and closed, had a sense of bravery that could defeat 10 with one force. At first, he was worried that the short stick Luo Guang gave him would not be able to withstand his strength, so he chose to stab mainly. As the battle progressed, he also understood that although the short stick was not thick, it was very strong, so he started to beat it happily. On a whim, he, wearing a suit, punched a zombie directly. The result of this was that some tight clothes were torn by the bulging muscles. Suddenly, the glass on the second floor of the nearby store broke, and a hunter jumped out, causing the people in the team to scream and attracting more zombies. Their team had a lot of survivors who joined along the way. These people were not trained and had little contact with biochemical crises, so they naturally couldn't control their inner panic. But there were people from Terra Sephir in the team, and they immediately went over to stop the other party's behavior and comforted him. "Don't come over," Luo Guang shouted, notifying Jill and others that they didn't need to come to help. The hunter was also attracted by the sound and immediately killed the noisy person. Luo Guang shook his left hand, and hit the hunter's chin with an uppercut, making the opponent stagger back a few steps. He jumped up and followed, and cut off the hunter's head with a knife. Luo Guang turned around and said, "Speed up." After excluding him and Jill, the other few people were already at their limit to deal with the approaching zombies while covering the team. If more hunters came, it would be impossible for him to save everyone without exposing his strength, so there would definitely be a lot of casualties. Fortunately, the City Hall building was not far from the new headquarters of BSAA, and they were very close to their destination. Some gunshots also reached Luo Guang's ears. Not all BSAA members participated in the opening ceremony, so the members who stayed at the headquarters had established a defense line and took in the survivors one by one. They were relieved to see Luo Guang's large force. These BSAA members were discussing whether to take the initiative to attack to support O'Brien and others. But this suggestion was rejected by O'Brien on the phone, who instead asked them to hold their ground and shelter the survivors on the spot. So they would let go of their worries when they saw the large army. After the team entered, Luo Guang, Jill, Chris and Steve separated from the others and went to the armory. During this period, Jill and Chris returned the two hardened armored weapons to Luo Guang. Ashley took the initiative to follow Claire to comfort the survivors. Now it is unknown when this biochemical crisis will end, so they have to prepare for the placement of survivors in advance. O'Brien took on the task of preparing supplies. He will contact all parties to prepare various living supplies and weapons and ammunition, and then transport them to the helipad on the rooftop of the headquarters by helicopter. The armory of the new headquarters of BSAA is 30 square meters in size. The most numerous weapons in it are still pistols, which are the Beretta M92F pistols familiar to Luo Guang and others. In addition, there are only two UMP-9 submachine guns left. All the G36C assault rifles have been taken away, but there are plenty of bullets left. Luo Guang and his team didn't think about asking those people to give up their assault rifles for them to use, so it mainly depends on how to distribute the two submachine guns. But there was no entanglement. The two submachine guns were given to Chris and Steve, while Luo Guang and Jill chose double pistols. Everyone took up their weapons and put on their tactical equipment, and saw O'Brien's secretary walked in. O'Brien was sitting in the general command room. He sent his secretary to give the 3 walkie-talkies to the 3 of them, which was to facilitate their communication with the command room. Steve, the only one who didn't get the walkie-talkie, looked unhappy at this time. "Communication test, this is Luo Guang. We have got the walkie-talkie." O'Brien picked up the walkie-talkie in front of him and said, "This is the command room. I heard your words very clearly." Luo Guang said, "What's the situation now?" O'Brien said, "The situation is very bad. As long as there are places where people gather in the whole city, there are biochemical viruses being released. Places where people gather refer to shopping malls, pedestrian streets, restaurants, and other places. Originally, the square in front of the Terra Grigia City Hall was also one of the deployment points, because the benefits of success were too great, and all the high-level leaders of the anti-biochemical organization could be caught in one fell swoop. However, the ingenuity of the Greyhound organization believed that such a place would be subject to key inspections before and after meetings, and there would be no chance of sneaking in. Once discovered, it is very likely that the biological and chemical bombs installed in other locations will be exposed, so this attack target was cancelled on the advice of this wise man. Luo Guang asked, "Do you know how the hunter came? This is not a natural mutation of the virus. Hunters and lickers are different. They are actually biochemical weapons created by humans. Moreover, This nearly 2-meter tall monster is not a biochemical bomb that can be disassembled and assembled at will. It cannot be easily sent into the city. Steve nodded at the side and cursed in a low voice, "Is the city's customs eating shit? They let in all this stuff." O'Brien answered Luo Guang's question in the next second. He didn't already know the news, so he answered so quickly, saying, "We haven't been able to investigate the situation clearly now. We only know that the enemy used a biological and chemical bomb to trigger a biological crisis. All the people at the center of the explosion turned into zombies, so we didn't. Witnesses told us what happened. The enemy's direct use of human biological bombs and the direct placement of biological bombs in trash cans or other inconspicuous places to detonate them are two different situations, and they are also very important clues." Jill asked, "No surveillance?" O'Brien sighed and said, "Yes, but we can't see the situation clearly because there are too many people. Even if we confirm the location of the explosion, we can't be sure which method the enemy will use." The three of them fell silent. Luo Guang pressed the call button on the intercom and said, "I know the most important thing now is to save the survivors here. Can you contact the city government or the police station?" O'Brien ordered the people below to contact various official organizations in the city and replied, "We have already contacted them." The fire department thought that the explosion was an ordinary bomb attack or an accident, so they directly drove the fire truck to put out the fire. "There is basically no one in the bureau." He continued, "The situation at the police station is similar. They all went out early in the morning to maintain order around the area, so neither side was able to establish temporary shelters in time. Under normal circumstances, these two departments will open and establish temporary shelters, and will also send some forces to establish sub-shelters in places such as hospitals or schools. But judging from the current situation, it is impossible. This will cause most of the survivors who are outside to avoid it. They can only find a place to tremble and pray that the zombies and monsters cannot find them." "Where's the city government?" "The shelter over there is operating normally and has accommodated most of the guests who attended the opening ceremony as well as some tourists." O'Brien paused and said, "But I heard that it seems that there was a large number of guests who attended the opening ceremony and ordinary citizens. The treatment was different, so some conflicts broke out." Luo Guang didn't have a good impression of the brainless mayor. The other party may feel that his behavior of running away without saying a word will make these rich and powerful guests lose the favor, so he will favor those guests in subsequent arrangements, causing other people to be dissatisfied. Luo Guang brought the topic to the main topic and said, "Ignore their nonsense for now. You guys continue to stick here, while Jill and I set out to rescue people, so we need them to provide intelligence support and use surveillance to tell us where there are survivors. Meow, please comment meow." Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 519. Just when Luo Guang and others, under the command of O'Brien, kept rescuing survivors and returning them to the BSAA headquarters for resettlement, TV stations from various countries received a package at almost the same time. There are quite a few things inside, including a videotape, a USB flash drive and an appraisal report. CBS, one of the 5 major television stations in the Lighthouse country, naturally also received it. For them, receiving such packages is a common occurrence. There are no regular terrorist attacks now, so they opened the package without much hesitation and took out the contents to look at it. After they read the contents of the package, the entire broadcast room fell silent and looked at the manager sitting in the main seat. The manager only said that he was going to find the boss, and then left the broadcast room. The content of the videotape is very simple. The Greyhound organization specifically stated that they wanted to report that FBC had secretly assisted them in creating a biological crisis. The Greyhound organization wants to self-destruct in this way because this incident is not painful for their own organization and can also improve the cohesion of the victims of biohazard within the organization, but it is a heavy blow to the FBC. This is big news. Generally speaking, the sooner the TV station publishes this matter in the newspaper or on the news, the more traffic it will earn and the more profitable it will be. But the stakes are high, and the power behind the FBC is the lighthouse state, so these evidences do not dare to be released rashly without confirming their authenticity. The manager came back very quickly. He said with a gloomy face, "We are a step too late. The media has already informed us." When he went to see his boss, he was scolded for being slow and only reporting the matter now. The manager explained, "The boss has received the news. Not only our company, but also the other 4 major TV stations and foreign TV stations have received these things. Especially the TV station in Italy got angry and cursed the FBC and Morgan on the temporarily inserted program." One of his editors asked, "Shall we keep up?" The general manager got the order from his boss to follow immediately, but he personally thought this was too risky. In addition, they have fallen behind others, so even if they are released directly now, they will not benefit the radio station much. After thinking for a while, he said, "This report must be done, but we can't just eat other people's exhaust." Another editor, who is good at reporting on various criminal cases, said, "We can invite identification experts to come over for analysis, such as asking voice print experts to identify again, etc." Among the things sent by the Greyhound organization was the appraisal report of this voice print comparison. "You should arrange this immediately. Be sure to find an authoritative person. Don't invite those pheasants back to save money." The manager is very satisfied with this suggestion. It not only meets the boss's requirements, but also can make it into a series and maintain heat. In case of any reversal, they can stop losses in time. Copy that. After saying that, the editor left the broadcast room. The steward continued, "Does anyone else have any ideas?" A senior reporter raised his hand and said, "I want to interview the FBC and see what they have to say." The manager nodded and said, "Very good, you can do this, issue an invoice, and the company will reimburse you." The senior reporter got up and left. He had to prepare for his business trip quickly. The manager glanced around, and the remaining people did not express any useful opinions, so he said, "Others are going to prepare the manuscript now. Remember that this matter has not yet been finalized. Those of you who are responsible for writing the manuscript should remember this." Yes, the people present were all old news people, so they naturally understood what the other party meant. After they returned, some manuscripts full of suspects, possibles, probably and the like were soon released. With such a big event happening in the city of Terra Grigia, Morgan had no way to go back and take charge of the overall situation. He was stuck in the municipal government building in Terra Grigia, waiting for a helicopter to arrive and head to the branch here. As mentioned before, the mayor treats distinguished guests differently from ordinary civilian survivors. The difference is that only guests have priority to leave the city of Terra Grigia by helicopter. Even if there were women holding babies among the survivors, they were not given priority to leave. Morgan is also a well-known figure in the world, but he is far behind compared to other guests, so he also needs to wait for a while. After he learned the content of the information received by the TV station over the phone, he asked the mayor of Terra Grigia to borrow a vacant room with a dark face. There were only himself and his confidant Field in the room. After the confidant checked that there was no monitoring equipment, he got straight to the point and asked, "Do you know what was said on the phone just now?" Field shook his head and said he didn't know clearly, but felt a little uneasy because of the other person's tone. Morgan snorted coldly and said, "The Greyhound organization knew your identity and announced your funding of them to the world's media. They also said that their first biochemical crisis in Italy was we fund the money and provide the virus." Field looked panicked and said, "Impossible." Morgan asked, "What's impossible?" "The person who called me was very sure." "You're not hiding anything from me, are you?" Field took a deep breath and said, "I didn't. I have never met anyone from the Greyhound organization at all." The other party cannot have any direct evidence to prove my involvement. The plan against BSAA was cancelled in the end. Their original plan was to use the biochemical crisis to give BSAA a problem, make them look bad, and then solve it with lightning speed, so as to attack BSAA and improve the status of their own organization. However, during the preparation of the plan, their research on the vaccine and antidote for the T-Night Abyss virus fell into a bottleneck period, and no results have been developed so far. Under this circumstance, it is easy to shoot oneself in the foot if the Greyhound organization rashly causes a biochemical crisis. During this period, Luo Guang, the current head of the African branch, can be said to have made an unparalleled contribution to the company's chaos, allowing the BSAA organization behind him to gain huge benefits, including reputation and a large amount of donations of funds and materials. So Morgan could only regretfully cancel the plan in the end. Therefore, the Greyhound organization did not know the real purpose of Morgan's funding them, so its think tank chose to put the first Italian biochemical crisis on FBC. Field continued, "This is a conspiracy of the Greyhound organization. They want to use this to throw dirty water on us. We were not the sponsors at the beginning, but they pushed the bad things they did onto us." Morgan naturally knew this. The other party was also a confidant. He was just testing it before to confirm that the other party did not do other things behind his back. He thought about the previous plan and said, "The problem is that although the plan was cancelled in the end, the money was still transferred." Field asked, "What evidence did those TV stations get?" Morgan also asked the person who notified him, so he knew a lot of information. He replied, "The communication records of your communication with the leader of the Greyhound organization." "Impossible, I used a professional voice changer. Even if it was recorded, ordinary people would not be able to connect the woman's voice with my voice." Field thought of this and suddenly said, "Could it be voice print identification?" Morgan nodded and said, "Yes, the enemy used voice print identification, but it is not clear who did the identification for the time being. Voice print identification can identify the voice that has passed through the voice changer. The problem is that there are hundreds of millions of people in the world. Who would be so bored as to compare voice prints one by one? They would only do this after finding a suspect." So Field finished this question and continued, "Greyhound must have known about this through other channels, so they took my voice for identification." Before Morgan could reply, his phone rang again. After just a few words, he hung up the phone, turned his head and looked at Field, and said, "The boss of CBS contacted me." As a public opinion giant, the boss of CBS is not too afraid of the FBC, an organization responsible for anti-biochemical, so he will not stop his subordinates from grabbing traffic, nor will he falsify it to affect the reputation of his company. He told Morgan that he had done his best. Field did not reply, waiting for the next words. Morgan said, "He said that his subordinates invited an authoritative voice print expert to the show to recompare and confirm." When Field heard this, he understood what the other party meant. He did not show any hesitation or entanglement, and answered directly, "If there is really solid evidence, I will take full responsibility for it." Morgan thought for a while and said, "After all, the Greyhound organization is notorious. The other party may use voice synthesis to defraud us, and the evidence they gave to those TV stations may not be used in court. And from the current situation, the Greyhound organization does not have the evidence that the bank account that transferred money to them belongs to Field, and that bank account has been closed long ago." Although Field decided to sacrifice himself to save Morgan and his FBC organization, he would not give up. "I will prepare a lawyer here." Morgan shook his head and said, "No hurry, I will first let the FBC issue a statement that these evidences are forged and are a conspiracy of the Greyhound organization." "What if this involves?" Morgan raised his hand to stop the other party from saying the next word, hiding his inner indifference, and said, "This is just a self-torture trick." His so-called self-torture trick is not to save Field, but to save the reputation of the FBC. In simple terms, it is to portray FBC as a pitiful image that believes in the innocence of its members, but is betrayed by them in the end. As a confidant of the other party, Field could not understand that Morgan wanted to throw him out to save the reputation of FBC, but he said he was willing to take responsibility when he knew it was possible. So he nodded seriously. The specific response will have to wait until they go back to collect more information and then make a decision. Morgan and Field left the room and went to the apron. Some people around seemed to have received the news and were looking at the two with suspicion. But Morgan and Field held their heads high, just like before, and looked like they were upright and didn't need to be afraid of slander. Luo Guang brought another group of survivors back to the new headquarters of BSAA after saying goodbye to a few children. They did not continue to set off. This is the fourth group of survivors they brought back, and together with the ones they rescued before, a total of 72 people were saved. It was almost noon, and although there was no such thing as a lunch break when dealing with a biohazard, Luo Guang decided to take a break and catch up on water while confirming the latest intelligence. Then he learned about the FBC from O'Brien. If the Greyhounds said that the biochemical crisis in Terra Grigia was sponsored and promoted by the FBC, he might believe it. But now the other party is accusing the FBC of participating in the first biochemical crisis created by their organization, so Luo Guang has to be skeptical, and the reason is very simple. Although the FBC organization participated in that biochemical crisis and finally solved the incident in a proper manner, it did not gain any benefits from it, and even let his GIMZ troops pick up the credit. As a tyrant, Morgan would not be so bored as to deliberately do such a high-risk and low-return thing. Luo Guang did not have a good impression of Morgan, but he felt that the FBC organization still had a necessity to exist. Healthy competition can promote development, and he did not want the BSAA to dominate alone, because no matter what, once it is monopolized, the ambition of the monopolist will swell up. O'Brien himself has a tendency to eliminate biohazards by any means necessary. If the BSAA really monopolizes the anti-biohazard missions in the world, the consequences will be unimaginable. Of course, he did not forget that his GIMZ unit is also an anti-biohazard unit. But Wu Song's personality is not to involve politics too much, and to focus on anti-biohazards. In addition to his secret cooperation with the mysterious country, he keeps a certain distance from the top leaders of other countries, and has never expressed his political inclinations to the outside world. Although the GIMZ has been expanded, the number of people is still too small. Now it can only deal with biohazard incidents in small towns with a population of 10,000 or 20,000. By the way, before his vacation, Luo Guang hired the GIMZ unit with public funds in the name of the African minister of the BSAA to conduct a carpet sweep in Africa to ensure that the prague parasite has disappeared. Jill looked at her boyfriend frowning as he drank water and asked, "Are you thinking about the F.B.C?" Luo Guang nodded and said, "Yeah. I don't think Morgan would do such a stupid thing." Jill agreed. The commander also said that this might just be a conspiracy of the Greyhound organization. "I don't like Morgan. He established the FBC more to realize his own ambitions rather than to solve the biochemical crisis, but I don't think he would fund the biochemical crisis." Steve had a different opinion on this and said, "What's so strange? The old man might want to direct and act in a biochemical crisis himself, and then solve it himself to gain benefits." He didn't understand these things very well, but he was quite clear about things. Luo Guang gave him a thumbs up in his heart. The Terra Grigia panic in the game was a play directed and acted by Morgan himself. But he still said, "You have a point, but the enemy accused the FBC of the biochemical crisis in Italy. He didn't get any benefit from that incident, right?" Steve recalled, "Well, it seems so. In that incident, the FBC handled a biochemical crisis normally, and did not take advantage of the crisis to ask Italy to pay any price, or use it to expand the power of its own organization. Chris commented, "You didn't study the anti-biochemical history seriously, and this statement exposed you." Before Steve replied, Luo Guang said, "Steve has made a lot of progress, and there is no need to force himself to know these things clearly. At least while maintaining his personality, he is now an excellent BSAA fighter." Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 520. Steve's personality hasn't changed much when he first met Luo Guang, he's still the same talkative person. But under Chris's continuous guidance and years of work, he has now learned to hide his anger in his heart instead of being unable to control his mouth and say anything without thinking. Searched Can on Google. So when he first went out to rescue survivors, Steve kept quiet as he advanced to kill the enemy, only talking about things related to the action. But when he encounters survivors, he can also take the initiative, using his experience working on Terasef to comfort the frightened people. I also think about more things when doing things, so I can come up with some useful ideas on the topic of Morgan instead of directly criticizing Morgan as a bad person. That's why Luo Guang plays Steve. Chris agreed, he is indeed a good soldier now. After he finished speaking, he rubbed Steve's head, causing the other person to wave away with an impatient expression. While fixing his messed up hair, Steve said, "I worked very hard to impress Claire. It's just that I'm not good at memorizing things with a book." Speaking of Claire, he lay on the table with a wretched expression and sighed. Chris shrugged at Luo Guang, who came over and said, "Don't look at me. I'm not stopping him from pursuing my sister now." Steve has become better and has been devoted to his sister for so many years, so Chris will naturally not stand in his way anymore. Luo Guang wanted to say something else, but Gil looked at his watch and reminded him, "It's rest time, let's go." Although they seemed to have talked about a lot, in fact it only lasted 5 minutes. Luo Guang stood up, used a water bottle as a basketball, and threw a long shot into the trash can in the distance. He passed by Steve, who was still lying down, patted him on the shoulder and said, "It's time to do the work." On Morgan's side, although many people had received news that the FBC was in trouble, they did not take the initiative to do anything until everything was finalized. The mayor of Terra Grigia did not lower the priority of Morgan's helicopter ride because of this. Anyway, the other party was only going to the FBC branch in the city, not leaving the city to return to the European continent. The distance is very close, so there is no need for the mayor to offend the other party over this trivial matter. "What's the situation now?" Morgan entered the command center of the NATO branch and asked about the situation immediately. Most countries have published the contents of the reports they received. Judging from online public opinion, people are quite critical of us. The branch director stepped forward to greet the other party and answered the question immediately. The criticism was just a word chosen by the branch director to sound nice. In fact, people on the internet were not so polite. They were already using all their strength to curse the FBC organization. Morgan glanced at the other party and said, "I'm asking about the situation here. There is a biological crisis in Terra Grigia right now. Is there no action on the branch's part?" They were an anti-biochemical organization, and the most important thing was to solve the biochemical crisis that occurred, but the first reaction of his subordinates was that they were reported by the Greyhound organization, which made him a little unhappy. This is the biggest difference between FBC and BSAA. The members' attitudes towards biochemical crises are basically different. The senior officials, including Morgan, only regard this anti-biochemical campaign as a channel for them to assert their power and seek benefits. Naturally, they will not carry out a large amount of anti-biochemical propaganda and education to their soldiers like BSAA. Coupled with the cooperative publicity between TRSF and BSAA, BSAA has always been the dominant force in the FBC organization in public opinion. The enemy is also aware of this situation, so he formulated this plan to target FBC. When the branch director heard what Morgan said, his back felt cold. He reacted a moment slower this time before saying, "Our troops have already set off," but a moment later, B.S.A.'s people have arrived and are cleaning up the zombies in the city, so I asked them to slow down, but don't help BSAA make wedding clothes? Morgan was dissatisfied with the behavior of the branch minister. The FBC is now at a disadvantage in terms of public opinion. At this time, the other party actually wants to be passive and sabotage instead of asking their men to come over and save people. He suppressed his anger and continued to ask, "Is the other party also doing rescue work?" "Yes, yes." Not only the newly arrived BSAA troops, but also their branch heads took the initiative to rescue the survivors back to the new headquarters. The branch head was nervous for a moment and forgot to say these words. Morgan asked again, "Then we didn't do this? Wouldn't you learn from each other?" The branch director complained directly, "We don't have many combatants in this branch. There are only about 20 agents. It is already very difficult to protect this place. The FBC branch occupies a large area, so more than 20 people can barely ensure that there are people in every direction for defense. But in fact, there are more than 20 people in this branch. There are more than 200 people operating it, but they do not need to receive certain anti-biochemical training like the clerks of BSAA." Although Field was suspected of funding a bioterrorist organization, he did not remain silent. He said, "Wouldn't you retreat to the second floor and guard the staircase? That way you can free up manpower." The branch director thought hard and finally came up with an excuse. He said, "Alas, it's that damn Greyhound organization. They don't know how to transport the hunters to the city. Our branch was ambushed by that thing and lost several people. Even if we retreated, we couldn't send anyone out." After a pause, he added, "And to be honest, not everyone is as good at fighting as those ministers of BSAA. If we send them out, they might get involved." Everyone present knew the background and resume of Luo Guang and his friends. In the field of anti-biochemical crisis, their agents really couldn't catch up. "In that case, why do you ask our men to come slower?" Morgan said, not wanting to listen to the other party's explanation, and directly issued the latest order: "You urge our troops to arrive here quickly, and also form a search and rescue team for me to save people." But, under the boss's coercive eyes, the branch director said, "I will do it immediately." Morgan ignored it and turned to the main seat of the command center. This incident was taken by the BSAA again, which can be said to be worse for the FBC who is being questioned. So what he has to do now is to collect more intelligence and plan ahead for the next storm. After reading the latest news, Field took the initiative to say, "Although the current situation is not good, the governments of various countries, including Italy, have not expressed their opinions. They are all smart people, how can they stand on the side now, but once this matter is confirmed, everyone will push the wall down." Morgan naturally understands the style of those ZERs. Although this happened, the FBC is, after all, a NATO anti-biological organization led by the lighthouse country. Therefore, even if this incident is confirmed, the FBC will not be disbanded, and at most a group of people will be replaced. But Morgan regards the FBC as his own thing. If he is not in this position, this organization will have no need to exist for him. So he must not be overthrown, so he came up with a trick to make the FBC a victim. He added, "We FBC only need to be responsible to the NATO countries, and we don't need to pay attention to the ideas of most countries. I will contact President Seymour, and you will prepare the manuscript according to the plan." The content of this manuscript is naturally the response of the FBC to the report of the Greyhound organization. Morgan must first win back a city in public opinion. President Seymour convened his think tank and discussed this matter. They were discussing whether the FBC people had done such things to aid the enemy, and they were also thinking about how to minimize the impact of this incident on the Lighthouse country, and even whether they needed to abandon the FBC and Morgan if necessary. Leon was also in this meeting, answering questions about antibiochemical at any time. He mainly answered two questions. The first question was whether there were T-virus samples in the FBC Institute. Of course there were. The T-virus can be said to be the most preserved biochemical virus in the world, because these raw materials are needed to make T-virus vaccines. The second question was the situation of the Italian biochemical crisis. Leon did his homework in advance, so he told the whole thing in detail. After learning about these things, President Seymour discussed with the think tank again and asked, "What do you think?" One think tank immediately answered, "From the description of Agent Kennedy, the FBC did not gain any benefits from the Italian biochemical crisis. The world is bustling with people, and I don't think the FBC would do such a thing." President Seymour nodded and asked, "In other words, this is the enemy's conspiracy to defeat the FBC organization?" Another man wearing gold-rimmed glasses specializes in law. He thought for a while and said, "It is very likely. However, the enemy lacks the most critical evidence. They have no evidence to prove that it was the FBC who transferred the money, and they don't even have a transfer record. The Greyhound organization did not release the transfer records. After all, they don't want their accounts to be discovered. If the accounts are frozen, the funds will be cut off." After listening to the two people's analysis, President Seymour said, "In this case, the FBC should be able to deal with it." Most people nodded. The evidence of the Greyhound organization could not kill the FBC organization. But there will always be people who raise objections. Although it cannot be killed, everyone should not forget the voice print identification. President Seymour did not feel disappointed and asked, "What do you mean?" The man took a deep breath and then said, "We are not in court, not everything depends on evidence. The other party sent all the so-called evidence to the media, with the purpose of using public opinion to throw dirty water on the FBC, and the people will only believe what they want to believe. At that time, even if we officially clarify it or even the court makes a fair judgment, it may not be useful. They will only think that we are shielding the FBC organization." The man finished his words in one breath, and the meeting room fell into silence. They are all good at playing with public opinion, so they naturally understand what the other party means. As this person said, Hashim Qatar, nicknamed Smart Fox of the Greyhound organization, did this to disintegrate the organization from the bottom and ruin its reputation. After all, the first biochemical crisis of their organization was thwarted by the FBC. Even if the plan failed in the end, it could discuss the FBC organization and give their own organization a vent, so the leader Jack Norman immediately agreed to the plan. There is only one problem here, that is, the Greyhound members who sent these packages will face the risk of exposure. But how could Hashim, known as the Smart Fox, miss this point? He asked his men to travel in disguise, and then kindly paid poor people to help send the things out. With this protection, the enemy's tracking difficulty will be increased by several levels. This is only the first step of his plan. As for the subsequent plans, he did not tell the leader Norman, because the next thing has nothing to do with the Greyhound organization. On the other side, with the arrival of the regular troops of the European branch of BSAA, Jill began to take over the command of the troops and immediately began to deploy operations. At this time, the first-come first-served principle applies, so the Terra Grigia city government decided without hesitation to let BSAA take charge of the events in the city. This time, BSAA came faster than FBC, thanks to the early warning plan that came out a few days ago, which was what Luo Guang suggested to O'Brien before. After knowing the news, Luo Guan couldn't help but feel relieved for the duplex apartment he bought here. From the current situation, the city should not be sunk by the solar matrix satellite. Jill contacted the peripheral troops at the headquarters and asked them to choose a suitable location in the periphery to establish a temporary position, then clear the enemy and rescue the survivors. Terra Grigia City is located on the ocean and surrounded by the sea, so there is naturally no need for a blockade. The peripheral troops quickly replied to Jill. They thought of a good way, which is to use the cruise ship docked at the seaside as a temporary base. The cruise ship can be used as a fortress on the sea. As long as a passage for getting on and off the ship is built with the shore, it will be a barrier that can be blocked by one man and 10,000 men. Zombies can't break through it at all. The only thing worth noting is the hunters and the lickers that may be mutated during the mutation, but the soldiers can be on high alert on the cruise ship, so from the security point of view, this choice is also safer. Jill thought about it for a while and agreed to the other party's suggestion, but also asked him to communicate with the ship owner and others. The regular troops of BSAA were not all deployed outside the city. Some soldiers landed on the helipad of the new headquarters by helicopter. They also brought a lot of military food to the rescued civilians. There were more than 100 soldiers. Jill asked them to split into two parts and follow Luo Guang and Chris to continue the previous cleanup and rescue mission. They did not fail to consider the safety of the new headquarters. After all, they had rescued hundreds of survivors. Among the rescued survivors, there were also 7 or 8 police officers and a dozen people with military service experience. They were all temporarily recruited by the BSAA as part-time soldiers to participate in the defense of the new headquarters. That's why O'Brien decided to send all the supporting troops to rescue more survivors. With more soldiers, Luo Guang and Chris can rescue more people at the same time and cover them back to the headquarters, instead of having to escort them back to the headquarters building without saving many people as before. There are many more biochemical crisis events in this world than in the game settings, and there are many types of viruses involved. Coupled with the company's chaos, the combat power of the BSAA and FBC is much stronger than in the game. Therefore, with the entry of the regular troops of the BSAA and the support of the coalition forces of the Mediterranean countries, all the survivors in Terra Grigia were quickly rescued. As for cleaning up the biochemical monsters in the city, it is only a matter of time, and there will be no problem of being forced to use solar energy to clean up the entire city as in the game. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 521. Morgan and Field immediately set off to return to the Lighthouse country without waiting for the biochemical crisis in Terra Grigia to be completely over. They first went to the White House to explain the Greyhound report to President Seymour and made a deep self-examination in front of him. President Seymour was not satisfied with this. If the other party could make good results in the Terra Grigia incident, they would not be so passive now, so he asked the other party to find a way to solve this incident by themselves, and then sent them away. Next, Morgan and the others returned to the FBC headquarters without stopping. After contacting enough media, Morgan stood on the press podium and formally responded to the incident in front of the live camera. The reports of the Greyhound organization are all slandering our FBC. He first concluded, and then began to point out the loopholes in the evidence provided by the other party one by one. In addition to the lack of bank accounts and transfer records, Morgan also mentioned that the other party's voice evidence only compared voice prints, but did not prove that the two recordings were not synthesized. Field wrote this speech according to Morgan's request, mainly denying the enemy's accusations from a legal perspective. This part of the professional content is a bit difficult for ordinary people to understand, so he used relatively simple sentences to explain the evidence. After talking about the evidence, Morgan began to analyze the reason why the Greyhound organization did this, which was to frame the loyal people and put the FBC in trouble with public opinion. He mentioned that the public believed the words of the biochemical terrorist organization more than the anti-biochemical organization, which made him very sad. Then Morgan listed the biochemical crises that the FBC had solved since its establishment, and how many soldiers the FBC had sacrificed in these crises to win sympathy. The above words were all to create a pitiful image of the FBC being misunderstood by the public. After Morgan finished reciting the manuscript, he heard the reporters attending the press conference clapping and applauding, and he knew that his speech had played a certain role. Although this was a live radio broadcast, his speech target was actually locked on the reporters in front of him. They are the uncrowned kings who control the right of public opinion. As long as they believe in themselves, these reporters will naturally become his mouthpiece and persuade the public for him. This live broadcast will naturally not end so quickly. Next is the question and answer session. Commander, you just mentioned so many issues of evidence, but why didn't you respond to the voice print identification report? The first reporter who spoke was very sharp and didn't give Morgan any face at all. Morgan's face did not change, and he didn't think too much. After all, it had been several days since the incident. He immediately replied, because before confirming whether the audio is synthesized, this identification report without the voice print expert's claim is meaningless. That's right, although there is an identification report, there is no information such as the identification agency and the identification person on the report, and voice print experts from all over the world have stated that they have not done this identification for the Greyhound organization. We at FBC have already invited professional voice print experts to analyze and re-identify the audio. Commander, do you mean that this identification report doesn't explain anything? That's right. The reporter pressed on and asked, but CBS has also invited experts to analyze. Judging from the content currently being broadcast, the situation seems to be very unfavorable to FBC. What do you think about this, Commander? This is the last question Morgan was thinking as he said this. He sorted out his thoughts and said, this is back to the question I answered before. It is not rigorous for the radio station to do this kind of analysis without confirming that the evidence is correct. We at FBC will reserve the right to pursue CBS for this irresponsible behavior. The reporter nodded, thanked Morgan, and didn't bother asking questions. After the host of the press conference made a transition, it was the next reporter's turn to stand up and ask questions. His focus was not on evidence, and he said, Commander, what I want to ask is who is Field mentioned in the report? He is RF.B.C.'s Minister of the Interior. Morgan did not emphasize that Field was a close confidant, and the other party did not attend the press conference today. Field was actually his adjutant and assistant, but he also had a position in the FBC, which was to facilitate him to convey Morgan's orders. The reporter asked, is he in charge of finance? Morgan shook his head, no, RF.B.C.'s finances are managed by dedicated financial personnel, and are transparent to NATO member states. The reporter wrote down the words in a notebook and asked again, Commander, how is the FBC handling this person now? Morgan replied, we believe everyone in the FBC. The reporter was a little surprised, but what if? You are being irresponsible to the public. Morgan said seriously, I will not doubt my subordinates because of the unwarranted accusations of a notorious bioterrorist organization. Our FBC provoked a large number of enemies when solving the biochemical crisis. If every enemy uses this untenable evidence to slander our members, does every member have to be investigated and accused? Is our organization's anti-biochemical work still necessary? The reason why he said this first was more to show the attitude of the FBC, and he didn't want the FBC to fall into endless self-proof later. Morgan then said, I know that you will definitely think that we are guilty of committing crimes, so we are also considering launching an investigation process, but we are an international organization after all, so we have not yet determined which party or people will be responsible for this investigation. You can pay attention to the latest news released by us or the relevant departments. The reporter wrote hurriedly, but did not express his own opinion. Instead, he asked, "Then why did Greyhound choose you as a target instead of B.S.A.A? You should ask someone from the Greyhound organization this question." Next, Morgan replied in a cold tone. The host was ordered to sit down the reporter who still had questions and then called the next one. As if it was agreed upon, the next reporter followed the topic and asked his own question. Some people on the internet said that flies don't bite, so the Greyhound organization slanders the FBC instead of the BSAA organization. Commander, what do you have on this view? In fact, the content of this question is not much different from the previous question. Morgan's anger level increased again. He hated it when others compared FBC and BSAA. But this was a real live broadcast and he was not fooling the masses, so he did not avoid it or get angry. Actually, you will know if you think back to the biohazards I just listed. The FBC was the first anti-biohazard organization to thwart the Greyhound organization's conspiracy and prevent them from threatening the Italian government to hand over prisoners. Therefore, the other party would give priority to attacking us. The live broadcast lasted for more than 3 hours. Morgan basically answered the questions of all reporters present, unlike the TV series where he refused to answer. Returning to his office from the press conference room, he sat on the leather sofa and breathed a deep sigh of relief. For an old man, standing for more than 3 hours and constantly thinking about how to respond to various questions from reporters is too tiring. The anger accumulated in the middle was quickly overcome by physical fatigue, so the whole meeting went on smoothly. Morgan, who was resting, suddenly thought of something. At this time, Field should knock on the door and come in, thoughtfully bringing him a cup of warm water or hot tea. Just when he was thinking this, there was a knock on the door, and Morgan thought it was Field coming back. However, it was his secretary who came in, who was responsible for some non-confidential matters. Morgan asked directly, "Where is Field?" The secretary said, "The Minister of the Interior was taken away by FBI agents 10 minutes ago. This is the other party's investigation order and documents." With that said, he handed the document in his hand to Morgan. Morgan was a little confused about the current situation. He didn't understand why the FBI would suddenly take action against his people. In addition, Field's being taken away will definitely be photographed by reporters stationed outside the headquarters, which is another troublesome matter. He asked, "Did Field say anything?" The secretary shook his head and said, "No, he just asked me not to disturb your press conference, Commander." Morgan didn't ask any more questions and asked the other party to go out. He wanted to make a phone call to ask about the situation. On the other side, Field was sitting in the FBI car, thinking about the situation. He didn't ask his secretary to convey the message to Morgan because the FBI regarded him closely, and what he conveyed would most likely become a question to be asked in the investigation. And not contacting Morgan is also to try to draw a clear line with Morgan. Field also tried to talk to the FBI agent, but the other person was very professional and kept silent throughout the whole process, sandwiching him on both sides. This was the only restraint on him and he was not handcuffed. The FBI wants to take Field to one of their major branches to investigate his funding of biological and chemical terrorist organizations. This is a matter for the FBI to decide on its own and has nothing to do with President Summer. They also killed first and then reported. After taking Field away, his leader reported to President Summer and informed them that they were doing this just for the dignity of the lighthouse country. The FBI is a professional, so they naturally know the evidence very well and immediately conducted an appraisal. What is certain is that the audio and video recordings provided by Greyhound are not original evidence, but only copied versions. At the same time, after expert monitoring, it can be confirmed that the two recordings have not been cut and spliced, and the voice prints are consistent. So the FBI decided to take action against Field to investigate the truth of the incident. The reason why Field was not handcuffed was because the enemy provided insufficient evidence, so in name only he was taken back for investigation. 3 black cars set off to their destination. Suddenly, a truck ran a red light and hit the car in front. Almost at the same time, the car behind was also rear-ended. FBI agents did not hesitate to sound the alarm, enemy attack. A hail of bullets instantly enveloped the 2 vehicles in front and behind. Enemies on the left and right sides also took out submachine guns from their luggage bags and fired without caring about the presence of pedestrians. The car carrying Field in the middle immediately broke away from the group and tried to escape from the battlefield. Bullets were hitting the car, and the agent sitting on Field's right bent Field down, while the agent on the left drew his gun and prepared for battle. The car is of good quality and the body is bulletproof to protect the people inside. After chasing all the way, they successfully got rid of the enemy's pursuers. Taking this opportunity, they immediately abandoned their bullet-riddled car and headed to another FBI base to change cars. Unexpectedly, when we were heading toward the destination from the alley, the attacker appeared again. One of the FBI agents was attacked and died on the spot. The other agents reacted and immediately fought back, finally killing the sneak attacking enemy. Field passed by the fallen enemy and his face changed. That person was an FBC agent he knew. He immediately thought that Morgan wanted to kill him to silence him after knowing that he was captured. Although it would make people outside suspect that Morgan was guilty, killing Field would make him dead without any evidence. But Field thought about it and felt something was wrong. If he really wanted to do this, his boss would not be stupid enough to send an FBC agent here. This was too obviously contrived. And he also thought of a suspicion he had raised before, that is, there was an undercover agent of the Greyhound organization inside the FBC, so they knew that he was involved in funding the Greyhound. Therefore, this FBC agent is likely to be the undercover. Field thought of this and said nothing. He followed the FBI agent to the base and drove a gray Ford car to the safe house. 2 of the remaining 3 FBI agents went into the house to check, and the remaining one was responsible for watching Field. It's safe. No one is following outside. The agent turned on the surveillance of the safe house, checked it quickly, and then reported. Keep observing, don't let your guard down. When will the support arrive? Another agent seemed to be a little higher in rank, so he was the one to give orders. They encountered attackers after getting off the car, so they couldn't let their guard down just because they arrived at the safe house. At least half an hour. Traffic is blocked. This was all caused by the attack launched by the enemy. Hearing this, everyone nodded seriously and cheered up. Fortunately, they successfully waited for the response. After the 2 teams exchanged secret codes and confirmed their identities, the FBI agent opened the door to welcome the support in. Those who survived the attack were relieved when they saw the support. So they relaxed their vigilance a little and saw that the support personnel were holding guns in their hands, but they did not doubt too much and just thought it was for safety. The captain of the FBI support agent looked around the safe house and said, "It's not safe here. We have to leave quickly." Yes, the surviving agent asked his men to bring Field out. "Thank you for your cooperation." The captain smiled and waved his hand, as if to let his men protect Field together. However, just as the support agents were in place, accompanied by the sound of gunfire, the 3 agents who survived the attack showed terrified expressions on their faces. They fell to the ground with disbelief in their eyes. Field was also surprised, but not stunned. He did not think of killing these agents one on many, but turned and ran away. But surrounded by these enemy-disguised FBI agents, how could Field escape? He was immediately pressed to the ground and fed a bottle of unknown liquid. Field soon fainted and was carried away by the enemy. Not long after the attack, Morgan learned that the FBI convoy where Field was attacked. But the FBI controlled the flow of information, so his friends in the FBI could not learn the details of the attack. They only told him that Field did not die in the attack and was now out of contact. In any case, Field could not afford to have an accident at this juncture, so he immediately sent FBC agents from the headquarters to search for the other party's traces. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting me out.